Chapter 970. On the ice field, all the violent polar bears went berserk, and their violent aura filled the entire ice field. Countless grizzly bears charged towards Nyetian, their blood-colored eyes flickering with fierce light. Nyetian felt an oppressive aura coming toward him, and he couldn't help but narrow his eyes. At this moment, when everyone saw the violent polar bear charging at Nyetian like a madman, their eyes couldn't help but tremble, and they were filled with deep doubt. Nyetian. Seeing this, Imorushi's face tightened with great worry. Without hesitation, Choshan moved and rushed toward Nyetian. Annihilation Earth seal open. Feeling that the space around him was about to freeze, Nyetian made up his mind and made a seal with his hands. A strange force came from the ground, and suddenly the ground shook violently. Rumble! As Nyetian made a seal, the entire ice field shook violently, and the ice within thousands of meters cracked. With a loud noise, the ice rose from the ground and formed an iceberg. Bang! 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 Countless muffled sounds could be heard as the violent polar bear crashed into the iceberg. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere, and the surface of the iceberg was completely cracked. Nyetian stamped his feet hard against the ground and dashed forward. Then he spun around and gazed off into the distance as he bellowed, "Show yourself!" Just now, he faintly sensed a strange sound wave in the space, and all the violent polar bears attacked him at the same time. It was too strange. There was only one explanation. Someone was secretly controlling the violent polar bears. When Nyetian appeared in the sky, he spread out his divine sense and immediately sensed that someone was hiding in the void. As he roared, a surprised voice was heard, and then several figures slowly appeared. It was a young man in luxurious clothes and the old man in gray clothes. "There are people in the void." The people on the ground shouted when they saw people appear. At this time, no matter how stupid they were, they could understand that these people were secretly controlling the violent polar bears to attack the caravan. "Bastards! I'll fight them." Someone roared and wanted to rush over. "Nobody move." At this moment, a furious roar rang out. A figure stood out and signaled for everyone to not act blindly without thinking. Nyetian looked down at that person. It was the president of the Fuer Chamber of Commerce, Luo Yi. Not only was Luo Yi the president of the Fuer Chamber of Commerce, but he was also Luo Zheng's second brother. He was the leader of the caravan. Nyetian looked at Luo Yi and his eyes narrowed. The violent polar bear had killed so many people from the Chamber of Commerce. Luo Yi should be the angriest. How could she still be so calm at this time? Luo Yi calmed the crowd and raised her head. She flew up into the sky and stared at the young man. "Your Highness, what is the meaning of this?" "Crown Prince." When everyone heard Luo Yi's words, they couldn't help but be stunned. They didn't expect that the finely dressed youth was actually the Crown Prince. Nyetian's eyes narrowed. He didn't know what kind of status this Crown Prince had in the snowy ice fields. However, looking at Luo Yi's appearance, this person's status should be very high. Among the people present, only Luo Yi knew the identity of the well-dressed youth. The latter was the Crown Prince of the snowy ice fields, Li Hao. "President Luo." Li Hao smiled faintly and said calmly, "I was bored and wanted to train the violent polar bear. However, I accidentally bumped into your caravan. I'm really sorry." The crowd was stunned. The violent polar bear had killed hundreds of people from the caravan and destroyed countless items. Was this finely dressed youth going to let it go just because he was sorry? Luo Yi's expression was extremely ugly. He stared at Li Hao, obviously suppressing his anger. Li Hao was the crown prince of the snowy ice fields. A casual word from him was more important than the lives of hundreds of people from the caravan. Although he was the president of the Chamber of Commerce, he couldn't do anything about it. "President Luo, are you all right? If there's nothing else, I will continue to train the violent polar bear." Li Hao smiled faintly. His eyes were filled with disdain. He looked at Luo Yi as if he was looking at a dog. Bullsh *T. Right at this moment, an angry roar was heard. Then a figure shot up into the sky. You killed so many of my brothers. You will pay for their deaths. As the angry voice fell, the figure directly struck out with his palm. The powerful palm strength caused the void to tremble. A huge palm shadow was launched at Ing Li Hao. The crowd was stunned. They didn't expect someone to attack at this time. Third brother. Luo Yi was stunned for a moment. He immediately reacted and saw the face of the figure. It was the vice president of the Fuer Chamber of Commerce, Luo Zheng. Luo Zheng didn't know Ing Li Hao's identity. However, those who died were his brothers who had gone through thick and thin with him. How could there be such an easy thing in the world? Seeing Luo Zheng attack, Luo Yi's face darkened. His eyes were filled with fear. He wanted to stop Ing Li Hao, but it was too late. You are seeking death. Ing Li Hao faced Luo Zheng's fatal attack. There was no fear in his eyes. Instead, he smiled coldly and casually punched out. Boom! The void suddenly shook. A huge force suddenly descended. It was so terrifying that it made people feel an irresistible sense of despair. Luo Zheng was still in the air. He directly let out a shrill scream. His figure flew out, drawing a glaring line of blood in the sky. Nie Tian was stunned. His figure moved and caught Luo Zheng. He checked with his divine sense. His face suddenly darkened. The latter's vitality was actually extinguished. One punch, just the most casual punch, and Ing Li Hao directly killed Luo Zheng. Luo Zheng had the strength of a sixth heaven being. In addition to his demonic physique, he was stronger than ordinary seventh heaven being human martial artists. However, he was actually killed by Ing Li Hao with one punch without the strength to fight back. Ing Li Hao's strength was really strong. Moreover, Nie Tian could see that Ing Li Hao didn't use any martial arts technique in that punch just now. It was just pure strength. Eighth heaven being. Nie Tian's divine sense swept over Ing Li Hao. The latter's strength was actually at the eighth heaven being. It seemed like he could break through to the ninth heaven being soon. Ing Li Hao looked like he was only in his 20s. His martial arts talent was amazing. Third brother. Luo Yi's figure moved and came to Nie Tian's side. She hugged Luo Zheng's corpse and wailed. She actually cried bitterly. Vice President. The other people from the Fuer Chamber of Commerce shouted in unison. The air was filled with a sorrowful atmosphere. Nie Tian's gaze swept over Luo Zheng. Although the latter was not a good person, he was willing to stand up for the people around him at the critical moment. It was enough to show that he was a person with courage. Chapter 971. Ing Li Hao stared at Nie Tian cold. His eyes were filled with undisguised, murderous intent. Just now, Nie Tian had killed dozens of violent polar bears, and just now, he had discovered their existence. This made Ing Li Hao very unhappy. He vaguely sensed a trace of threat from Nie Tian, and when he looked at Nie Tian, this feeling of threat became even more obvious. Why? Why do you want to kill him? Luo, he suddenly roared. He stared at Ing Li Hao with red eyes. Why? Ing Li Hao countered with a question. There was a smile on the corner of his lips as he indifferently said, My body is priceless. You try to harm me, so does that mean I won't retaliate? You. Luo, he let out a low roar. He couldn't breathe and spat out a mouthful of blood. His brother had died in front of him. The murderer was showing off in front of him, but he couldn't take revenge. This kind of pain and anger, if he hadn't experienced it himself, he wouldn't have been able to understand. Ing Li Hao could have spared Luo Zheng, but he chose to kill him. It was enough to show his bloodlust. Yet Tianling smiled coldly. He stepped forward and said, Why do you want to kill me? It was obvious that Ing Li Hao was behind Nie Tian being attacked by all the violent polar bears. Of course, he had to get to the bottom of it. Do I need a reason to kill you? Ing Li Hao's eyes flashed. He looked condescending and disdainful. He said cold, If you want a reason, it's because I want to kill you. Huh? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He had seen arrogant people, but he had never seen someone as arrogant as Ing Li Hao. What kind of bullsh T crown prince was simply too arrogant? You want to kill me. Coincidentally, I want to kill you too, Nie Tianling said coldly. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. Sensing Li Hao wanted to kill him without a reason, Nie Tian could kill him without a reason too. You? Li Hao smiled coldly, and the corner of his eyes twitched. The disdain in his eyes intensified as he said arrogantly, "You're merely at the 6th level of celestial being, while I'm at the 8th level of celestial being. I really don't know where your courage comes from." "You could try." Nie Tianling laughed. Killing intent rose from all over his body, almost condensing into a solid form as it enveloped Li Hao. At this moment, Luo Yi was dumbfounded. He had never expected that Nie Tian would really fight with Li Hao. Li Hao's identity was too terrifying, and his strength was also ridiculously strong. Was Nie Tian crazy? The gazes of the others also trembled, their eyes filled with intense anticipation. Mo Rushi and the others became nervous, fearing that something would happen to Nie Tian. A little loach wants to fight a flood dragon? You overestimate yourself. Li Hao's cold gaze swept across Nie Tian's body. Then he said to the 3 guards behind him, "Kill him." Yes. The 3 guards, who were at the 7th level of celestial being, answered in unison. They then locked their gazes on Nie Tian, revealing their killing intent. "Brat, go to hell." The 3 guards looked at each other and attacked at the same time. The aura of the 3 connected as if they had become one. In the void, 3 huge handprints appeared, majestic and mighty, pressing down on Nie Tian. Luo Yi sensed that something was wrong and immediately dodged with Luo Zheng's corpse. Facing the joint attack of the 3 guards, Nie Tian's eyes were firm and filled with killing intent. Li Hao and Elder Sang watched from the side, their eyes flashing with anticipation. It seemed that they could not wait to see the tragic scene of Nie Tian being killed in one move. Boom! Boom! The 3 handprints pressed down at the same time, and the surging aura caused heaven and earth to collapse. At this moment, a sea of thunder appeared behind Nie Tian, and a huge thunder dragon rolled out, its roar echoing throughout the world. Boom! With a loud explosion, the thunder dragon directly broke through the 3 handprints and pressed forward with a loud rumble. Boom! 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 3 muffled sounds rang out, and the 3 guards were sent flying backward. Mad Doomsday reverse kill. At the same time, Nie Tian's figure moved, flashing in the air like the wind and lightning. 3 dazzling sword auras pierced through the air and landed on the 3 guards. Before the 3 guards could react, they were killed, and their corpses dissipated in the sea of thunder. Hiss! When the people on the ground saw this, they all sucked in a breath of cold air and felt a chill run down their spines. A warrior at the 6th level of celestial being had killed 3 warriors at the 7th level of celestial being in an instant. Such a shocking scene would have been impossible to believe if they had not seen it with their own eyes. How was this possible? Li Hao and Elder Sang were stunned at the same time, wondering if their eyes were playing tricks on them. "Your Highness, your dog is dead. It's your turn now." Nie Tian's figure stood in the void, his whole body surging with a terrifying killing intent. His fighting intent was wild like a sword, extremely sharp. "You're courting death." Li Hao's eyes flickered, and a vicious voice came out of his throat. Suddenly, a cloud of white mist rose behind him, condensing into a long spear. As the long spear appeared, the surrounding space suddenly became cold. A bone-chilling coldness spread out, and crystal-clear ice crystals formed in the air. An ice elemental spirit. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed, but the determination in his eyes did not change. "Since you forced me to use the freezing sky spear, your death is not in vain." The long spear in Li Hao's hand slashed through the void, and a huge chill suddenly surged out. Crack, crack, crack. A crisp sound rang out in the void, and the entire space was frozen. Even a 1,000-meter-long thunder dragon was frozen. Nie Tian felt his Yuan meridian being suppressed, and his eyes trembled. He did not expect that the power of Li Hao's spear would be so strong. "Break!" Li Hao pointed his spear, and with a loud bang, the thunder dragon was directly shattered. Countless bolts of purplish gold lightning were frozen again before they could spread out. What a strong ice elemental spirit! Nietian was shocked. The ice elemental spirit in Ing Li Hao's body was very strong. Even the 10,000-year ice soul couldn't compare to it. At this moment, even Nietian's 9-star dragon vein was suppressed by the ice elemental spirit. If it wasn't for the astral energy in his body, he would definitely be frozen into a block of ice. Ing Li Hao's eyes trembled when he saw that Nietian was not injured, but after that, a playful smile appeared on his face, and he arrogantly said, "Stinking brat, your strength has shocked me. I wonder how many moves you can take from my freezing sky spear. I'll know after I try." Nietian lightly smiled, and the corner of his mouth curled up in a strange arc. He directly put away the sword Absolute Heaven Slash, and a surge of astral energy suddenly surged out of his body, condensing into a black long sword in the air. "Yama sword," Nietian murmured with a smile as a 7th-grade star soul, the Yama sword, appeared in his hand. Chapter 972. The instant the Yama demon sword appeared, a strange surge of energy gushed forth, shattering the ice crystals in the surroundings as the cold aura weakened. How is this possible? Ing Li Hao's eyes narrowed, filled with disbelief. What kind of energy is this? It's actually not suppressed by the desolate cold energy. Ing Li Hao's desolate cold energy was incomparably tyrannical, capable of suppressing all types of energy. Even Nietian's 9-star dragon veins was suppressed by the desolate cold energy. But at this moment, the energy gushing forth from Nietian was actually able to ignore the desolate cold energy, causing Ing Li Hao to be shocked. "Your energy is very strong, but mine isn't weak either." Nietian smiled faintly, feeling slightly shocked in his heart. Ing Li Hao's desolate cold energy was indeed strange, capable of suppressing even his 9-star dragon veins. But it was a pity that the astral energy Nietian was using now was the source of energy, unaffected by any other energy. Arrogant, Ing Li Hao roared in rage, releasing the desolate cold energy from his body. The ice crystals in the surroundings instantly expanded, condensing into numerous ice shards that whistled towards Nietian. Nietian felt the incoming desolate cold energy, but he wasn't afraid at all. The Yama demon sword in his hand directly pierced out, shattering the countless ice shards. "MHM." Ing Li Hao's eyes darkened as the rage in his eyes intensified. Since the Skyfrost spear had appeared, how could he allow Nietian to continue living? Boom! The spear pierced out, causing the entire space within a few thousand meters to be enveloped by a layer of coldness. The coldness in the air caused people to feel a suffocating pressure. Nietian felt a wave of coldness gushing towards him, and before he could even react, he was already frozen solid. What a tyrannical coldness! Nietian's body was frozen, but he was still extremely calm. He sighed in his heart, and after which, a terrifying astral energy gushed out from his body. As soon as the star power appeared, a cluster of bizarre black flames rose behind Nietian. Immediately afterwards, a sea of flames spread out and melted the space and time around him. Hellfire, another 7th-grade astral soul. What terrifying power! The crowd stared at the scene in the air as their eyes trembled. Initially, they thought that since Nietian was frozen, he would die without a doubt. But who would have thought that the hidden strength in Nietian's body was even more terrifying, able to directly break through the frozen space? Luo Yi was stunned. He had thought that Nietian was just a guard that Luo Zheng had randomly found. He did not expect the latter to be so powerful. However, there was a great deal of worry in his eyes. He hoped that Nietian could kill Ing Li Hao and avenge Luo Zheng, but he was afraid that this would happen. Ing Li Hao was the crown prince of Sub-Zero Ice Field. If he really died at the hands of Nietian, then not only would Nietian suffer, but the entire Fuer Chamber of Commerce would also suffer. Luo Yi was in a dilemma, and her gaze gradually became more and more complicated. Damn it! Ing Li Hao was even more enraged when he saw Nietian breaking through the frozen ice. His silhouette flickered as his wintry spear whistled out, resembling a dancing serpent. Frost and frost appeared in the air as a terrifying coldness gushed forth like a hurricane, frenziedly pressing down on Nietion. Nietion frowned as the hellfire intensified, enveloping his entire body. With a flicker of his silhouette, he left behind a trail of black flames in the air. Rumble! The Yama Devil sword slashed down as a terrifying sword intent gushed forth, directly shattering the space. Nietion's silhouette broke through the icy hurricane, frenziedly rushing towards Ing Li Hao. Ing Li Hao didn't expect Nietion to be so terrifying, forcibly breaking through his wintry hurricane. Bang! A muffled sound rang out as Nietion's sword slammed into Ing Li Hao's left arm. Ing Li Hao's silhouette shuddered as he was directly forced back several hundred meters. A horrifying wound appeared on his left arm as fresh blood spurted out. Bastard! Ing Li Hao's entire body surged with a trace of coldness as he immediately sealed his wound. His handsome face became ferocious due to extreme anger. Your strength is only SOSO. Nietion smiled coldly as he succeeded in one move. A trace of disdain appeared in his eyes. Ing Li Hao was even more furious. Like a mad dog whose tail had been stepped on, the anger in his body instantly turned into coldness. The wintry spear in his hand stabbed out violently, enveloping the entire area in a terrifying coldness. Puff, puff, puff. In the air, the terrifying coldness condensed into 300-meter-long icicles. Like moving icebergs, they bombarded towards Nietion. Be careful! The crowd's hearts trembled as many of them exclaimed in unison. Ing Li Hao's desolate cold chi was too terrifying. Even from 10,000 meters away, they felt a real sense of suffocation. They really didn't know how Nietion could withstand such a degree of coldness head-on. Nietion felt a bone-chilling coldness gushing towards him. His entire body was actually under immense pressure, causing his gaze to involuntarily tremble. What kind of energy is this exactly? How can it be so terrifying? Nietion was astonished. Ing Li Hao's desolate, frigid energy was extremely oppressive. Not only was it able to suppress his 9-star dragon bloodline, but even though he had 2 7th-grade star souls, he still felt a stifling pressure. The power of the desolate cold chi isn't something you can imagine. Just obediently accept your death. Ing Li Hao roared, as though he could already see the scene of Nietion being blasted to death. His entire face contorted in agony. Don't even think about it. Nietion coldly spoke. With an intention of his will, the astral soul steel trembled once more as another surge of astral energy gushed forth. Around him, a malevolent-looking giant of over 1,000 meters in size was formed. Bang! 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 The giant of astral energy had a malevolent expression on its face as it punched out 3 times, directly shattering the 3 icicles. Nietion's body trembled slightly, but he immediately steadied himself, and the coldness around him faded a little. Yama ferocious appearance. This is already the 3rd, 7th ranked astral soul. Do I really have to use all 4 astral souls on this guy? Nietion mumbled to himself, a faint light flickering in his eyes. The power of the combination astral souls was very strong. With each appearance, Nietion's combat strength would increase exponentially. With all 4 combination astral souls, Nietion's combat strength was definitely comparable to the peak of the 9th level of the Heaven Realm. He actually felt a little reluctant to use all of them on Ing Li Hao. What's going on? The crowd below saw Nietion once again forcefully withstanding Ing Li Hao's desperate attack. They were all stunned, and their eyes became obsessed. Nietion's strength was too strange. Every time he released an even more terrifying power, no one knew how many trump cards he still had. Your Highness, the power in this kid's body is very strange. You have to be careful. At this time, Elder Sang, who had been watching the battle from the side, had a serious look in his eyes as he reminded Ing Li Hao. Sang Ku was a beast tamer and his mental strength was very strong. He could feel that there was a strange and terrifying power hidden in Nietian's body. It was vast and boundless, as though it was endless. Chapter 973. Ing Lihao's killing moves had all been blocked by Nietian, and he had even been injured. This was unacceptable to him. He was the crown prince of the snowy tundra with exceptional strength and talent. He had never met a worthy opponent among his peers, but Nie Tianling had appeared out of nowhere. Not only did Nie Tianling ignore his frigid desolation energy, but he was also injured. The difference between heaven and hell was unbearable for him. Today, he was not only going to kill Nie Tian, but he was also going to kill everyone in front of him. He did not care about the Fuer Chamber of Commerce at all. They were just a bunch of peddlers. Once the Fuer Chamber of Commerce was destroyed, there would be another 3 or 4 chambers of commerce appearing. There was nothing to worry about. Yes, Sanka was taken aback for a moment. Then, her lips curled into a cold smile. She looked at the crowd on the ground and released a strange sound wave from her body. Boom! The invisible sound wave spread out like a wave. The originally calm, violent polar bears became violent again. They roared, and the air was filled with a bloody and violent aura. Nietian's eyes narrowed as he looked at Mo Rushi. Mister, don't worry. With Qiushan here, I won't allow anything to harm Miss Rushi. Qiushan abruptly raised his head. Of course, he knew what Nietian was worried about, so he shouted to reassure Nietian. Nietian nodded. He believed that Qiushan's strength was enough to protect Mo Rushi. Besides, Zhou Xiao and Zhang Chao were not to be trifled with. Let's kill this crown prince first. Nietian raised his head and locked his eyes on Ing Lihao. The killing intent in his heart became more determined. Stinking brat, this prince is angry. Prepare to receive this prince's anger. Ing Lihao's eyes were also filled with killing intent, and a terrifying chill surged in his eyes. In the next moment, he suddenly made his move. The freezing sky spear was like a dragon breaking out of the abyss. It violently lashed out, and an extremely sharp coldness appeared in the air. Instantly, a power that contained some kind of restrictive power rushed out. Nietian did not move. He stood in the air as steady as a mountain. Kaboom! The moment the freezing sky spear fell, the Yama manifestation clasped its hands together and blocked the huge impact with the momentum of a cauldron. The huge collision caused the void to tremble. Countless strands of ice energy shot out, forming sharp icicles. Die! Ing Lihao didn't expect that Nietian wouldn't even try to evade his attack, and instead directly took it head-on. The corners of his mouth couldn't help but ripple with a cold smile. The long spear in his hand spun, and countless icicles turned into a sky full of arrows, pouncing towards Nietian. Boom! Almost at the same time, Nietian's body trembled slightly, and the fourth wave of star energy surged out, instantly condensing into a huge armor, perfectly combining with the ominous appearance of Yama. Hellish armor, Nietian's 4th 7th grade astral soul, and also his final astral soul. By activating the Hell armor, he had completely unleashed his fusion astral souls. In the air, Nietian wielded the Yama sword in his hand, as the ominous appearance of Yama enveloped his entire body. Terrifying hellish flames surged forth from the hellish armor. A tyrannical aura radiated from him, as though he was a devil god from hell. Bang, bang, bang. The sharp icicles slammed into the ominous appearance of Yama, but it was as though they had collided with a thick steel plate, unable to cause any damage. Nietian's aura surged madly, and the hellish flames surged around the ominous appearance of Yama, turning into black flames, looking extremely eerie and terrifying. This is impossible. Seeing that Nietian's aura had once again grown stronger, Ing Lihao roared in rage, as a look of indescribable fear appeared on his face. The desolate cold qi should be able to suppress everything, but why was Nietian's strength able to surge again and again? What kind of power was that exactly? Ing Lihao couldn't understand, and the bewilderment in his heart gradually turned into fear. Your Highness, it's time for you to obediently accept your death. Nietan Tianling sneered, and the Yama sword in his hand surged with terrifying hellish flames, starting a prairie fire in the air. The surrounding frozen space collapsed inch by inch, and the chilly aura quickly weakened. Impossible! Ing Li Hao shouted crazily, and the freezing sky spear in his hand struck out again, and the terrifying, desolate cold chi froze the space once again. However, this kind of power was too weak in front of Nietian. Kaboom! Nietian stabbed out with his long sword, shattering the giant ice, and a sharp sword light whistled out, directly blasting towards Ing Li Hao. This sword was extremely powerful, and not only did it contain the strength of the hellish flames and the Yama sword, it also contained the powerful sword intent within Yetian's body. Ing Li Hao had nowhere to retreat, and there was no way to dodge. If he was hit by this sword, he would undoubtedly die. No! Ing Li Hao instantly felt the aura of death descend upon him, and his eyes suddenly narrowed. The panic in his heart was magnified infinitely through his eyes. At this moment, Ing Li Hao's heart was filled with shock, fear, and despair. Your Royal Highness. At this critical moment, a scream was heard, and it was Sang Ko. He wanted to save Ing Li Hao, but it was too late, and he could only watch Ing Li Hao die in front of his eyes. At this moment of life and death, a sudden change occurred. In the void, an invisible force appeared, and a powerful palm force descended, directly blocking Nietian's life-threatening sword. Immediately, a figure in black appeared, saved Ing Li Hao, and left in a flash. Nietian's eyes slightly narrowed, and he actually did not notice that there was someone else hiding in the void. At this moment, Luo Yi, who was beside him, seemed to notice something and screamed, but she forcefully swallowed the rest of her words, and her face was full of fear. Luo Yi was relieved that Ing Li Hao was saved. If he really died, it would be a disaster for the entire Fuer Chamber of Commerce. Leave? Sang Ku was stunned at first, and then immediately reacted. Her figure shook, and she directly left. The violent polar bears on the ground also left, and after a loud bang, all the violent polar bears disappeared. Yet Tian's aura dissipated, and he was relieved to see that Mo Rushi and the others were fine. Even though he had failed to kill Ing Li Hao, Tian didn't feel too disappointed. He moved his body and came to Luo Yi, and his eyes flickered, and he asked, "President Luo, who saved Ing Li Hao?" Luo Yi obviously noticed something just now, but she did not say it. Luo Yi was stunned and obviously knew who that person was, but she sighed deeply and shook her head. "I'm sorry, I can't tell you." Tian frowned. Ing Li Hao killed Luo Zheng, and now he was saved by someone. It was very strange that Luo Yi clearly knew who that person was, but she was unwilling to tell him. Since Luo Yi was unwilling to tell, Tian did not want to force her. He believed that person would show up again after entering the snow ice field. Tian and Luo Yi landed on the ground, and there were corpses everywhere. This time, the Fuer Chamber of Commerce had lost thousands of people in this battle, and many items were destroyed. Fortunately, the martial artist who had comprehended was still alive. Chapter 974. Luo Yi stared at Tian, then glanced at the others. Her eyes were filled with fear. The Fuer Chamber of Commerce had suffered heavy losses. Only a few hundred cultivators were left uninjured. The entire caravan was half paralyzed. After hesitating for a long time, Luo Yi nodded and said, "I must go to the sub-zero ice field. I will have to trouble Mr. Nye to protect me." Tian was stunned. He didn't expect Luo Yi to be so determined to go to the sub-zero ice field. Now that the Fuer Chamber of Commerce had offended Ing Li Hao, even if the caravan could enter the sub-zero ice field safely, Ing Li Hao would definitely not let them off. Luo Yi knew that there was danger ahead, but she still wanted to go. There must be a reason. Tian glanced at the caravan and focused on the dozens of carriages. Could it be the sage bone? Tian guessed. Luo Yi must send the sage bone to the sub-zero ice field. If Luo Yi had a reason to go to the sub-zero ice field, Tian could only think of the sage bone. The sage bone is an extremely rare item, but it appeared in the myriad demons Dragon Abyss and the Fuer Chamber of Commerce. Could there be a connection between the two? Nietion thought to himself as he scanned Luo Yi with his divine sense. However, he didn't sense any dragon aura from her. Luo Yi is not from the myriad demons Dragon Abyss. After confirming this, Nietion's doubts deepened. All right, since President Luo is willing to go to the Sub-Zero ice field, I will naturally protect the Fuer Chamber of Commerce. Nietion couldn't understand. He didn't think too much about it. After agreeing, he went to Mo Rushi's side. Mo Rushi saw that Nietion was fine, and a smile appeared on her exquisite face. Next, Luo Yi led the Fuer Chamber of Commerce to clean up the mess. After half a day, the caravan slowly set off. This time, the speed of the caravan was even slower. Originally, there was only 1 day left. Now, it would take 3 to 4 days to complete the journey. The people in the caravan were all dejected. They didn't know what was waiting for them. After the battle with Li Hao, Nietion once again felt how weak he was. A mere 8-level Sky Realm expert actually forced him to use 4 astral souls. This caused Nietion to feel extremely dissatisfied with his own strength. Once again, he realized how terrifying the power of the stars was. Star power, the origin of power. Nietion was certain of this sentence in his heart. The power of the stars was not suppressed by any other power. It seemed to be able to restrain all types of power, including Li Hao's desolate cold power. The desolate cold power is very strange. It can even suppress the 9-star dragon vein in my body. This power is really terrifying. Nietion had a very deep understanding of Li Hao's desolate cold power. Although the dragon vein in his body had not completely formed, it already possessed a strong power. Even so, the dragon vein was still suppressed by the desolate cold power, which made Nietion very surprised. The power of the ice element could reach such a level. It was extremely terrifying. What was even more strange was that Nietion could feel the power of a restriction from the desolate cold power, like a barrier. The power of the restriction was very invasive, and it seemed to be able to suppress all types of power. Master, just as Nietion was feeling bewildered, the corpse demon lord's voice rang out. You know this power? Nietion was stunned and directly asked. There's a familiar feeling. The corpse demon lord seemed to be unable to confirm, and said, the cold aura of that cultivator is somewhat similar to the frost demon lord. Frost demon lord. Hearing this name, Nietion was suddenly stunned, and a hint of passion flashed in his eyes. The corpse demon lord had once mentioned this person to him. He was one of the 9 great demon lords under the command of the demon sovereign. The reason why Nietion had such a deep impression of the Frost Demon Lord was because the Corpse Demon Lord had said that this person was the only person in the world who could break the ice restriction, other than the Frost Demon Lord. Even the Demon Sovereign could not break the ice restriction. Corpse Demon Lord, are you sure? Nietion's voice was slightly low, and he asked nervously, if Li Hao was really related to the Frost Demon Lord, maybe he could break the ice restriction. But Nietion remembered that the Corpse Demon Lord had said that the Frost Demon Lord did not have any disciples or children. I'm not sure. Corpse Luo Demon King shook his head and said, I just have a vague feeling that perhaps that martial artist obtained the inheritance left behind by the Frost Demon King. Nietion frowned slightly. It seemed that he still had to continue to deal with Li Hao. Rui Qinyu did not have much time left, and most a month, and the desolate power would be activated. Nietion had to hurry. 3 days later, the caravan finally arrived at the snowy tundra, and a majestic ice castle appeared in front of them. Nietion looked at the ice castle in front of him, and his heart was slightly excited. After the gates opened, the caravan entered the city in a grandiose manner. The people of the snowy tundra were very enthusiastic, and they welcomed the caravan into the city on both sides of the road. Nietion felt very strange. Looking at the enthusiasm of these people, it was as if the tragic battle a few days ago had not happened. The Ice Snow City's guards led the way, and the caravan soon entered a large square. It seemed that in the past, when the Buer Chamber of Commerce came to Ice Snow City, they would be arranged in this square. None of the procedures had changed. It was just that the worrying Ing Li Hao did not appear. Leader Luo, please follow me. The state preceptor is already waiting for you. An Ice Snow City's guard appeared, and his attitude towards Luo, he was very respectful. All right, please inform the state preceptor. I will be there in a moment. Luo, he nodded lightly, and his eyes were flashing intensely, as if he was a little nervous. The guard retreated to the side and waited quietly. Luo, he instructed the caravan to count the goods and arrange them according to type, and then came to Nie Tian's side. Leader Luo, what's the matter? Nie Tian saw that Luo, he was very nervous and even a little scared, so he asked, Mr. Nie, I'm going to visit the state preceptor of the snowy tundra. Is it convenient for you to come with me? Luo, he said nervously, and his eyes were flashing with uncertainty. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed, and he saw that Luo, he was nervous, and it was obvious that she was afraid of something. Asking him to come with her was obviously to seek protection. I'm sorry. My task is to protect the caravan to reach the snowy tundra safely. Other things are not my responsibility. Nie Tian thought for a while, and cold refused. He would not work for others for free, especially when he did not know anything. Mr. Nie, Luo, he didn't expect Nie Tian to refuse so directly. She glanced at the guard and suddenly sent a message to Nie Tian, saying, Mr. Nie, as long as you can protect me, I will give you something that you are interested in. What is it? Nie Tian smiled faintly, and there was a touch of playfulness on his face. The thing inside. Luo, he turned around and fixed her eyes on a huge box. Nie Tian turned around, and his expression suddenly changed. Chapter 975. Nie Tian looked at the black box not far away, and the corners of his mouth twitched inadvertently. He did not expect Luo to directly propose to use the saint's bones as a reward to protect his safety. It seemed that Luo knew very well that the box contained the saint's bones. President Luo, what if I'm not interested in what's in the box? Nie Tian smiled faintly, his eyes extremely calm. The saint's bones were very tempting, but Nie Tian wanted to know the truth more. Why was Luo so afraid? Was someone trying to kill him? Mr. Nie, do you know what's in the box? Luo, he did not expect Nie Tian to answer like that. He had already noticed that Nie Tian would stare at the box from time to time with an unconcealable passion in his eyes. Luo, he was not a fool. He could guess that Nie Tian had definitely sneaked into the Fuer Chamber of Commerce. With Nie Tian's strength, he was definitely a top powerhouse in the Sumeru world. There was no reason for him to come to the Fuer Chamber of Commerce as a guard. Moreover, Luo, he had a vague feeling that Nie Tian had long known that the box contained the saint's bones. He even felt that Nie Tian had come for the saint's bones. However, he did not care what Nie Tian's purpose was now. He only cared about whether he could survive. I know what's in the box. The corners of Nie Tian's mouth twitched, but the next moment, his expression became serious. He sent a voice transmission. President Luo, it's not impossible for me to protect you. You just have to answer one of my questions. What question? Luo, he was inexplicably shocked, and the horror in his eyes intensified. I want to know, where did the saint's bones come from? Nie Tian said in a deep voice, and his eyes suddenly flickered. Luo, he actually felt as if a sharp sword had pierced his soul, causing his entire body to tremble, and he was frightened out of his wits. As Nie Tian spoke, he released a spiritual deterrent, and Luo, he actually felt dazed for a moment. I can't say. Still shaken, Luo, he grew even more nervous. It was as if she was facing a great enemy, and even her voice trembled slightly. You don't have to say anything. Just nod or shake your head. Nie Tian had a calm expression on his face. An evil smile appeared on his face as he spat out 4 words. 10,000 demons, dragon abyss? How did you know? Luo, he was stunned. She suddenly realized that she had lost her voice and couldn't finish her sentence. As expected, Nie Tian's heart sank. He immediately confirmed that the sage's bones were from the 10,000 demonic dragon abyss. No wonder Luo Yi was so panicked. It turned out that the hidden force behind the Fuer Chamber of Commerce was the myriad demon dragon abyss. However, Nietian did not understand why the Fuer Chamber of Commerce transported the sage's bones from the 10,000 demons dragon abyss to the snowy ice field, which was tens of thousands of miles away. Mr. Nya, since you already know everything, this lowly one's life is in your hands. Please save my life. Luo Yi's expression was extremely ugly. Nietian was the source of the saint's bones, but he knew nothing about Nietian. President Luo, I have another question. Nietian smiled confidently and nodded. He said, the person who's saving Li Hao a few days ago was from the 10,000 demonic dragon abyss, right? I can't say. Luo Yi's body trembled and his face turned pale. Nietian smiled faintly. He already understood something and didn't ask further. Nietian came to Mo Rushi's side and told her that he was going out with Luo Yi. He also told Qiu Shan and the others to protect Mo Rushi. With Qiu Shan around, Nietian was very relieved. With Qiu Shan's strength, as long as the opponent wasn't a martial artist at the peak of the celestial being realm, he could deal with them. Even Nietian found it difficult to deal with the blade dragon arm that had awakened the 6 Paths Heavenly Dragon seal. President Luo, let's go. Nietian arranged everything and smiled faintly. He was ready to go to the Imperial Advisor's mansion in the Ice Snow City with Luo Yi. Luo Yi nodded, with Nietian accompanying them. His expression softened a little. Along the way, Nietian kept thinking about why Luo Yi was so panicked. Who was it that wanted to kill him? Imperial Advisor? The Crown Prince? Or someone from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss? A moment later, Nietian and the others arrived at a magnificent mansion. It was the Imperial Advisor's mansion. President Luo, please. The guard who led the way smiled faintly. However, his tone was filled with a strong threat. Nietian and Luo Yi went straight to the main hall and saw a figure sitting in the middle of the hall from afar. The person had white hair and an aged appearance. However, he had an imposing aura like a lion. The person was none other than the Imperial Advisor of the Icy Snow Territory, and Huailin. President Luo, you're late. And Huailin said in a deep voice when he saw Luo Yi. A strong, oppressive aura swept toward Luo Yi. Honorable Imperial Advisor. Luo Yi was so frightened that he was drenched in cold sweat. His face was deathly pale. He quickly walked forward, and the moment he stepped into the hall, he was so frightened that he directly knelt on the ground and begged bitterly. Lord Imperial Tutor, there's a reason why I came late. Please look into it clearly. A reason? And Huailin let out a cold smile. A strong, murderous intent was emitted from his body as he roared. Do you know? You've ruined my plans. Honorable Imperial Advisor, please spare my life. Luo Yi was scared out of his wits. Nietian frowned as he watched from the side. Who exactly is this Honorable Imperial Advisor? Why is Luo Yi so afraid of him? It seems like there's some kind of deal between them. Honorable Imperial Advisor, don't scare him. At that instant, a voice was heard as a figure walked out from the crowd. Nietian's gaze sharpened slightly. He could sense a familiar aura from the figure, causing his expression to darken. The figure before him was tall and muscular, and his appearance was similar to Luo Yi's. Nietian was certain that this was the person who had saved Li Hao a few days ago. Big brother. Luo Yi's eyes flickered when he saw this person. He screamed as if he had just found a life-saving straw. The person who had suddenly appeared was none other than Luo Yi's elder brother, Luo Run. Nietian was stunned once again. He did not expect this person to be Luo Yi's elder brother. Second brother, get up. The Nining altar has not been destroyed. Your life is spared. Luo Ren said coldly. His eyes locked onto Nietian with a cold glint in his eyes. Murderous intent. Nietian was slightly taken aback. He could clearly sense the murderous intent in the other party's eyes. It was Luo Run who had saved Li Hao a few days ago. Nietian could not understand why the other party would do this. Luo Ren should hate Li Hao to the core for killing Luo Zheng. Why would he save him? Moreover, Luo Ren had appeared at the perfect time to save Li Hao at the most critical moment. This undoubtedly meant that he had been there all along. He just did not show himself. Luo Ren must have seen it with his own eyes when Li Hao killed Luo Zheng, but he did not save him. Luo Ren's actions were too strange. He did not save his own younger brother, but the person who killed him. Chapter 976. Nie Tian sensed Luo Ren's murderous intent, but he did not show it on his face. He said calmly, "I'm a guard hired by Vice Chairman Luo Zheng." "Oomph." Luo Ren sneered. "Kid, do you think I'm a 3-year-old? Do you think I'll believe you? Then what kind of person do you think I am?" Nie Tian asked calmly with a faint smile on his face. "You have the dragon ring and the dragon vein." Luo Ren smirked, and the coldness in his body intensified. He suddenly smiled and said in a deep voice, "Looks like Lord Dragonhead still doesn't believe us. He sent you to spy on us." Nie Tian's eyes widened and his face stiffened. It took him a few seconds to realize that Luo Ren had mistaken him for someone from the 10,000 Demons Abyss. Nie Tian already knew that the Fuer Chamber of Commerce was escorting the sage's bones from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss. It was not strange for Luo Ren to think that he was sent by the Dragon Abyss to keep an eye on him. At that moment, Nie Tian gradually came to a realization. He guessed that the Saint's Bones were an organization affiliated with the Demon's Abyss. They transported the Saint's Bones to Sub-Zero Ice Field for the Demon's Abyss. However, Nie Tian did not know why the Demon's Abyss wanted to transport the Saint's Bones to Sub-Zero Ice Field. "Since you already know who I am, why bother asking?" Nie Tian smiled faintly. He decided to go with the flow and admit that he was from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss. "You're from the Demon's Abyss." "Luo," he screamed. His eyes were filled with fear. He had just begged Nie Tian to protect him. He did not expect Nie Tian to be from the Demon's Abyss. Luo, he suddenly remembered that Nie Tian had asked him about the Demon's Abyss. It must have been a test. He suddenly realized something and shouted, "No wonder you knew that the box contained the Saint's Bones. Lord Dragonhead is worried about you, so he sent me to spy on you. There's nothing wrong with that." Nie Tian's countenance was indifferent, extremely calm. After which, he stared straight at Luo Ren and asked, "Do you want to kill me?" Luo Ren's eyes darkened and his face darkened. He was suppressing a huge anger in his heart. The Fuer Chamber of Commerce had served the Dragon Abyss of 10,000 demons loyally for dozens of years, but in the end, they were still suspected by the Dragon Abyss. It seemed like they were not from the Dragon Abyss after all. Of course not. And Huailin suddenly opened his mouth and laughed heartily. What Lord Dragonhead does is his business. How could we, his subordinates, dare to question him? Everyone is serving Lord Dragonhead, so why must we kill each other? That's true. Nie Tian smiled faintly and let out a long sigh of relief. However, Luo Ren's anger had yet to dissipate. He said in a cold voice, "Kid from Dragon Abyss, do you know that you almost killed Li Hao? He is the key to opening the 9-Yin altar." Nie Tian was stunned. He had no idea what the 9-Yin altar that Luo Ren mentioned was. This was the second time Luo Ren had mentioned the 9-Yin altar. It seemed like it was something very important. "Mister, you don't know. Ignorance is not a crime." And Huailin smiled faintly and signaled Luo Ren to stop. At this moment, Nie Tian had a question in his heart. He really wanted to know what the 9-Yin altar was. Luo Ren had saved Li Hao because of the 9-Yin altar. Luo, he had almost been killed because of the 9-Yin altar. "State Preceptor, I want to see the altar." Nie Tian smiled faintly and said in a commanding tone. He had already discovered that Huailin and Luo Ren were very afraid of the Dragon Abyss of 10,000 demons. They were even more afraid of his identity. Therefore, he could not be polite. The more polite he was, the more suspicious it would be. And Huailin was stunned. He exchanged a look with Luo Ren and then smiled. Of course, Nie Tian was from the Dragon Abyss of 10,000 demons. He could not afford to offend him. At this moment, Luo Yi's eyes were filled with excitement. He had never seen the legendary 9-Yin altar. He really wanted to see what it looked like. Subsequently, Huailin brought Nie Tian and the others to a remote courtyard in the State Preceptor's mansion. There was a huge stone tablet in the courtyard. Apart from that, there was nothing else. When everyone entered the courtyard, Huailin and Luo Run looked at each other and then formed a strange seal. The huge stone tablet rotated and a dark tunnel appeared on the ground. Lord Nietian, please. Huailin already knew Nietian's name. He smiled faintly and signaled Nietian to go first. Nietian smiled faintly and calmly. He directly entered the underground tunnel. The tunnel was very long. After walking for a few thousand meters, Nietian felt that he had arrived at a cave. After a long time, a bright light appeared in front of them. Nietian and the others quickened their pace. As he continued forward, Nietian's expression changed slightly. He sensed a mysterious power surging in the air, making him feel as if his blood and qi were about to surge violently. What a strange power! Nietian was slightly shocked. He forcefully suppressed the restlessness in his blood. After a while, Nietian walked out of the cave. The view in front of him widened. He had actually arrived at a huge valley. The moment he walked out of the cave, Nietian felt a mighty power in the sky. He couldn't help but raise his head. He was instantly petrified. As far as Nietian's eyes could see, an enormous altar appeared hundreds of meters high in the sky. The entire altar was very large. It had a radius of a few thousand meters. From afar, it looked like a huge spiritual formation floating in the air. Surrounding the altar were 9 huge skulls. They seemed to be the skeletons of some kind of ancient beast. They released a strange and eerie aura. At the center of the altar, a huge stone pillar appeared. It was engraved with strange runes. At the top of the stone pillar, a black flame floated. It had a strange shape. It looked like a long snake. It gave people a turbid feeling. The entire altar was ancient and majestic. It was vast and majestic. A frightening aura filled the entire heaven and earth. It was as if it was the ruler of this world. Lord Nietian, this is the 9-yin altar. Huailin smiled faintly. He pointed at the altar in the sky and said. Nietian nodded slightly. He looked at the huge altar in the sky. He was moved. When he was in the chaotic abyss, he had seen an ancient altar. He had absorbed the remnant power of the altar. However, he could feel that the 9-yin altar in front of him was even more frightening than the ancient altar. The power it contained was unimaginable. Nietian. At this time, the Sword Elder's voice came from his sea of consciousness. He said nervously, "The Blood Demon is here." Blood Demon. Nietian was slightly stunned. A name appeared in his mind. Blood Spirit Slaughtering. Boom. Almost at the same time, the 9-yin altar suddenly released an enormous force, following which the entire altar began to slowly revolve. A bloody and demonic aura slowly pervaded the air, filling the entire valley. Chapter 977. It's him. Nietian's eyes widened when he saw the black figure in the altar. He didn't expect to see the Bloody Butcher here. However, the Bloody Butcher didn't seem to be hostile. He just glanced at Nietian and asked Huailin, "State Preceptor, who's with you?" Huailin was surprised that Nietian and the Bloody Butcher knew each other. He said, "Mr. Blood, this is Nietian from the Demon Dragon Abyss." Demon Dragon Abyss? Is that the force that provided the saint's bones to the 9-yin altar? The Bloody Butcher asked. Huailin was a little embarrassed, but he still nodded and said to Nietian, "Mr. Nietian, the saint's bones came 3 days late. It's all thanks to Mr. Blood that the 9-yin altar hasn't been extinguished." "I see." Nietian smiled and looked at the Bloody Butcher. "Bloody Butcher, it seems that I should thank you for keeping the 9-yin altar from being destroyed." "You're welcome." The Bloody Butcher responded coldly and disappeared from the altar. Although he had fought with Nietian several times, he didn't know where Nietian came from. Nietian didn't pay much attention to the Bloody Butcher. It wasn't a good time to kill the Bloody Butcher. By this time, Nietian had already figured out what was going on. However, in order to understand more clearly, he turned to Huailin and asked, "What's going on, State Preceptor?" Huailin sensed that Nietian was angry and was a little nervous. He told Nietian everything that had happened in the past few days. After hearing this, Nietion understood the whole story. And Huailin was from the demon dragon abyss. He didn't have a dragon ring, so he didn't have a dragon vein. The Nining altar was an ancient altar that a Huailin found by accident. When he found it, the altar was almost destroyed. To keep it running, he had to absorb energy from the saint's bones. For the past few decades, the myriad demon dragon abyss had been providing an Huailin with sage bones. After the Nining altar absorbed a portion of the saint's bones' power, its vitality would be greatly weakened, but its compatibility would be greatly increased. Therefore, after the saint's bones were absorbed by the Nine Suns altar, they would be transported back to the 10,000 demons dragon abyss. Some people could fuse with the infected saint's bones. The Sword Elder had previously said that the reason why Yin Zishu and Yu Jingji were able to fuse with the saint bone was because they used an evil technique. In fact, this evil technique was the Nining altar. This time, the Fuer Chamber of Commerce had unfortunately encountered Ing Li Hao when they were transporting the sage's bones. They were a few days late and almost caused the Nining altar to be completely destroyed. Fortunately, the blood-slaughtered spirit appeared. His blood demon power was able to maintain the operation of the Nining sacrificial altar. Therefore, in the past few days, without the sage's bone, the bloody butchering spirit had been ensuring the operation of the Nining altar. Nietion understood all of this and could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Such a huge altar, how much power would it absorb in one go? Those were sage's bones, not cabbages. The people of the 10,000 demons dragon abyss were really generous. It seems that there must be a sage's tomb in the 10,000 demons dragon abyss, Nietion said in his heart. However, the 10,000 demons dragon abyss and Huailin each took what they needed. The sage's bones maintained the operation of the Nining altar, and the infected saint's bones had a higher compatibility. Therefore, the people of the dragon abyss could fuse with the sage's bones. Although the power would be much weaker, it was still better than looking at it and not being able to fuse with it. Sword Elder, such a huge altar, how much power does it contain? Nietion looked at the Nining altar in front of him and suddenly had a very bold idea. The corners of his mouth curled up, and he suddenly said with a smile, "It's hard to imagine." The Sword Elder was a little shocked and replied in a deep voice. Nietion nodded, and his eyes revealed a hint of passion. He said, "If Mo Rushi absorbs the power of the entire altar, it should be enough for her to completely awaken the sage's body." When the Sword Elder heard Nietion's words, his whole body stiffened, and he was completely petrified. After a long time, he nodded frantically. The Nining altar had absorbed a lot of power from the sage's bones over the past few decades. If Mo Rushi absorbed all of this power, not only would she completely awaken the sage's body, but her strength would also experience an unimaginable explosion. However, Nietion's idea was too crazy. The Nining altar was something that Huailin and the 10,000 demons dragon abyss had been managing for decades. It was about to open. How could they let him absorb the power of the altar? Unless Nietion killed Huailin and the others and directly took over the altar. At this moment, Nietion already had this idea in his mind. However, he still did not know how to open the altar, so he could not kill Huailin and the others yet. Lord Imperial Tutor, I heard Luo Ren say that Ing Li Hao is the key to opening the Nining altar. What does that mean? Nietion suddenly remembered Luo Ren's words and asked, and Huailin was startled, but he still said, "Lord Nietion, the Nining altar absorbs the power of the sage's bones. This is a process that allows the altar to recover its power. However, in order to absorb the power of the altar must be opened. To open the Nining altar, it needs an extreme cold energy. The desolate cold energy in Ing Li Hao's body is the extreme cold energy. It is enough to open the altar." "I see." Nietion nodded slightly. He was very satisfied with Huailin's performance. "Lord Nietion, as long as the altar is opened, anyone who absorbs the power of the altar will be able to break through the plane's restriction and advance to the Heavenly Emperor's stage." And Huailin said in a deep voice with a strange smile, Nietion's eyes narrowed slightly. Lord Imperial Tutor, are you hinting to me to absorb the power of the altar? I wouldn't dare. And Huailing's expression changed instantly. He did not expect Nietion to be so smart. He quickly said, the Nining altar is prepared for Lord Dragonhead. Nobody would dare to covet it. It's good that you know. Nietion smiled faintly, but his eyes flickered with a strange light. He could tell that Huailing wanted the Nining altar, but he was afraid of Zhou Donghuang's existence. That was why Huailing was trying to tempt Zhou Donghuang. Unfortunately, Nietion was not from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss. Moreover, he did not desire the Nining altar because it was left for Mo Rushi. After that, Nietion did not stay any longer and immediately left the place. Since the bloody slaughtered spirit liked to maintain the altar's operation, Zhou Donghuang decided to let him continue. Nietion only cared about the moment when the altar was opened. After a while, everyone returned to the hall of the Imperial Tutor's mansion. Lord Imperial Tutor, when will the altar recover its power? Nietion asked calmly as he took a sip of tea. This is the last batch of Saint Bones. The altar will recover completely once it absorbs the power of this batch of Saint Bones. Although Huailing was reluctant, he still answered respectfully. How long will it take? Nietion continued to ask. Chapter 978. Nietion smiled faintly. He knew Huailing was lying even with his eyes closed. He speculated that the Nining altar would recover in about half a month. And Huailing said 1 month because he wanted to leave enough time for himself to absorb the altar's energy. As long as Huailing absorbed the altar's energy, he would be able to break through the plane's restriction and advance to the Heavenly Emperor realm. At that time, would he still be the myriad demon dragon head? There's still half a month left. I need to increase my strength as soon as possible. Nietion thought to himself. His eyes were filled with determination. He guessed that when the altar opened, he would definitely face more enemies than Huailing and Luo Ren. There would definitely be people from the myriad demon dragon abyss, and even the myriad demon dragon head himself. Since the myriad demon dragon abyss had provided so many saints' bones to the Nining altar, how could they not pay attention to the Nining altar situation? Luo Ren thought that Nietion was sent by the myriad demon dragon head to monitor him. Maybe the myriad demon dragon head had really sent someone to infiltrate the boot air chamber of commerce. It was just that Nietion and Luo Ren had not discovered it. After Nietion asked about some things, he left the Imperial Tutor's mansion immediately. Luo, he also left with him. Nietion and Luo, he didn't say a word on their way back. After knowing Nietion's true identity, Luo Yi's attitude changed completely. She was respectful and did not even dare to raise her head. Mr. Nye, just as the two were about to reach their residence, a panicked cry was heard. Zhou Zhao's figure stumbled out. His entire body was covered in blood, and he looked extremely miserable. Zhou Zhao. Nietion's expression changed when he saw Zhou Zhao's appearance. He knew that something had happened. Mr. Nye, it's that crown prince. He sent people to kill us and stole everything. Zhou Zhao used all the strength in his body. After saying that, he collapsed to the ground. Bastard. Nietion carried Zhou Zhao. Suddenly, he thought of Mo Rushi and Qiu Shan. Blood surged in his body, and his eyes turned red. Oh no! Luo, he suddenly thought of the saint's bones and shouted, Lord Nietion, I'll go look for the Imperial Tutor. With that, Luo Yi's figure flashed, and she flew towards the Imperial Advisor's residence. Li Hao must have held a grudge for what had happened before, which was why he had killed and snatched the goods. However, he did not know that the box contained the saint's bones. Nietion carried Zhou Zhao as his figure soared into the sky. After a few flashes, he returned to the square. The scene in front of him was a bloody mess. Everyone was either dead or seriously injured, and all the goods were gone. On a mountain, Nietion's divine sense swept over and immediately saw Qiu Shan lying on the ground, covered in blood. Qiu Shan's breath was weak, but he was not dead. Nietion poured a thick stream of origin energy into Qiu Shan's body, then fed the latter several spirit pills and placed him in a secluded place. Rushi, Nyetian couldn't sense Mo Rushi's aura at the scene, so he roared like an enraged beast. Sir. At this time, Qiu-shan actually woke up. Qiu-shan, where's Rushi? Nyetian was panting, and his heart was in his throat. She was taken away. Qiu-shan said these words in a trembling voice, and then he passed out. Ingli Hao, Nyetian roared, and his whole body soared into the sky. His figure froze in midair, and his divine sense spread out completely. His eyes locked on a residence tens of kilometers away. It was the Crown Prince's residence. Swoosh! Nyetian's figure was like a stream of light, leaving several afterimages in the air. In just a blink of an eye, he appeared in the sky above the Crown Prince's residence. When the crowd on the ground saw his figure, they stopped and looked puzzled, not knowing what had happened. Ingli Hao, get out here! Nyetian roared, and his whole body surged with a monstrous sword intent. His body was shrouded by a huge sword shadow of 1,000 meters, and the surging sword intent surged thousands of meters away. The thunderous roar resounded in the void, and in the next moment, countless figures in black rushed into the sky and directly surrounded Nyetian. Who is so bold? How dare? A martial artist in black said sternly, but he only finished half of his sentence, and what greeted him was a sharp and cold sword intent. Wherever the sword intent passed, there was a bloody light. That person didn't even have time to react, and his body was directly submerged in the sword intent, and not even his bones were left. Courting death. When the other martial artists in black saw this, they were all enraged and shouted in unison, and then immediately attacked Nyetian. All of you, get out of my way. Nyetian's long silver hair fluttered in the crazy sword intent, and the violent sword intent wreaked havoc in the space. As he stabbed out with his sword, a terrifying aura of death spread out. Bang, bang, bang. After a series of muffled sounds, only the most pungent smell of blood was left in the sky. With one sword, Nyetian killed all the martial artists in black. Who is this person? How can he be so terrifying? When the crowd saw this scene, they all gasped, and their eyes couldn't help but tremble madly. The guards of the Crown Prince's residence were all martial artists in the celestial realm, but they were all killed by Nyetian with one sword. This strength was too terrifying. At this moment, Nyetian was completely in a state of rage, and he really wanted to kill gods and Buddhas in his way. As long as he couldn't find Mo Rushi, he would kill everyone in the Crown Prince's residence. Ingli Hao, get out here. Nyetian's figure moved, and he swooped down with his sword. The rumbling sound of the sword fell, like a mountain collapsing, and directly blasted a huge pit in the Crown Prince's residence. Bastard! The Crown Prince's residence is not a place for you to act so atrociously. At this moment, a figure rushed into the sky, and with a huge palm force descended. Die for me! Nyetian didn't even look at it, and suddenly, 12 huge sword shadows suddenly surged out of his body, instantly converging, and with one slash, heaven and earth trembled. The 12 heaven slaying sword formation appeared again, and the huge momentum was like a mountain, and the surging palm force was submerged in the sword shadows. Bang! With a muffled sound, the figure directly flew out, leaving a line of blood in the air, and heavily smashed into the layer of ice. That person is the Crown Prince's first retainer, Lord Sangku. My God, he actually can't even withstand one slash from his person. Someone recognized that the person who was killed by Nyetian was Sangku, the beast tamer who controlled the violent polar bear, and couldn't help but exclaim. But Nyetian didn't care at all, and the sword will around his body crazily increased, filled with terrible killing intent. He slashed down, and a huge pit appeared in the Crown Prince's residence. If Ingli Hao still didn't come out, the entire Crown Prince's residence will be destroyed by Nyetian. Bastard, you're courting death. Finally, a furious roar resounded, and a familiar figure appeared. It was Ingli Hao. Where is he? Nyetian's eyes were red, and like the god of death, there was not the slightest emotion in his eyes, only the most extreme, killing intent. Who is it? Ing Li Hao could feel the soaring, killing intent from the other party, and his eyes couldn't help but tremble, revealing a look of panic. Chapter 979. Nie Tian stood in the air with his blood-red eyes. Starlight shot out from his eyes, releasing a terrifying spiritual deterrence. Everyone below could feel a mysterious power surging in the air, causing their souls to tremble. It was an instinctive shiver that couldn't be resisted. Who is this person? How can he be so terrifying? The crowd was shocked, and their eyes were filled with panic. They could feel that the man, standing in the air, was about to destroy the world. The sword intent around Nie Tian continued to surge. The 9 dragon veins in his body revolved crazily, almost squeezing the limits of his martial body. Outside his body, the phantom of a giant sword that connected heaven and earth grew larger and larger, and the sword intent became denser and denser. The murderous aura made people feel despair from the depths of their souls. This time, Nie Tian was truly enraged. He was willing to sacrifice his life to find Mo Rushi. Brat, do you really think this crown prince is afraid of you? Ing Li Hao's body trembled, and the despair in his eyes faded a little as he shouted coldly. He was still brooding over the battle with Nie Tian and was very wary of the latter's strength. However, he was confident that as long as he focused on defense, he would be able to hold Nie Tian back. And as long as he held Nie Tian back, he would basically be saved. Something happened to the Crown Prince's residence would definitely alarm the entire Ice City. When the Ice Guards arrive, even the Emperor and the Ing clan's old ancestor appear, Nie Tian wouldn't be able to do anything to him even if he had heaven-defying abilities. Thinking of this, Ing Li Hao's eyes calmed down, and there was even a hint of mockery at the corner of his lips. He had already guessed the relationship between Nie Tian and Mo Rushi, and Mo Rushi was in the Crown Prince's residence. A few days ago, Ing Li Hao had placed all his attention on Nie Tian, so he didn't notice Mo Rushi's existence. But today, when he went to take revenge, he saw Mo Rushi and was shocked to the point of having improper thoughts. After capturing Mo Rushi and bringing her to the Crown Prince's residence, Ing Li Hao was prepared to make his move. Unfortunately, before he could do so, Nie Tian appeared. He was very clear that as long as he killed Nie Tian, Mo Rushi would still belong to him, Ing Li Hao. Courting death, the blood in Nie Tian's body surged, and he spurted out several mouthfuls of blood. His sword intent had been infused with a violent and bloody aura. Since Ing Li Hao was courting death, Nie Tian would fulfill his wish. Weeping blood/kill, Nie Tian roared furiously. His figure moved in an instant. His entire body was like a sharp sword whistling through the air. The sword absolute heaven/wreaked havoc in the space. As the sword slashed down, the blood-red sword shadow seemed to have spread out for thousands of meters. It was like a blood-red river that wanted to tear this part of the world apart. His first move was a forbidden technique. Nie Tian didn't hold back, actually wanting to kill with a single strike. The wild, murderous sound rang out, and the void was filled with the most terrifying killing intent. Ing Li Hao was taken aback for a moment, but he quickly reacted. The freezing sky spear struck out again, freezing the heavens and earth. The desolate cold energy condensed into a giant ice shield in front of him. You're dead for sure. Nie Tian didn't care at all. There was only anger and killing intent in his eyes. Kaboom! The earth-shattering sword slashed down, and an ear-piercing tearing sound rang out. Many people's eardrums started to bleed. The giant ice shield was directly cut in half. The blood-red sword shadow slashed down, and the space seemed to be completely torn apart. A blood-red curtain appeared in the sky. In the next moment, an extremely shrill scream rang out, and Ing Li Hao's figure was directly smashed into the ground. Boom! Ka! 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 The 1,000-meter-long blood-red sword shadow landed on the ground, and the icy ground shook violently. A terrifying ravine formed, and the entire Crown Prince's residence was actually split in half by this ravine. With the strength of a single sword, Nietian had split the entire crown prince's residence in half. The power of this sword was earth-shattering. He killed the crown prince. The crowd was completely stunned by the scene in front of them. Many people were dumbfounded, unable to believe what they had just seen. Someone had killed the crown prince in Ice Snow City. Wasn't this a challenge to the entire snowy lands? Ingli Hao, you're not dead yet. At this moment, Niet Tian's eyes darkened. With a loud roar, he clenched his fist in the air, and a huge amount of energy shot out. Bang! A loud explosion rang out, and a blood-red figure flew out from the broken layer of ice. It was a bloody mess and looked like a pile of mud. It was no longer recognizable as a person. The entire Ice Snow City was built on top of a layer of ice. Nietian's sword had created a 100-meter-long ravine, but the bottom of the ice could no longer be seen. It's the Crown Prince. The crowd's eyes widened, and countless shrill cries rang out. The pile of flesh in the air was Ingli Hao. Nietian's forbidden sword had allowed him to break through his limits in extreme anger. Ingli Hao had taken the attack head-on, but he was still alive. However, Ingli Hao was not far from death. In fact, he was even more miserable than death. All his bones were shattered, his meridians were broken, and his Yuan meridians were completely destroyed. Ingli Hao was more useless than a useless person. Ingli Hao still had a bit of consciousness left. He wanted to say something, but no words came out. Where is he? Nietian's hand clenched the air, and he grabbed Ingli Hao's neck tightly. His roar was like thunder from the 9 heavens, resounding in the world of ice and snow. Everyone felt as if they had been struck by lightning. Their bodies trembled, and the fear in their hearts spread uncontrollably. Crown Prince. At this moment, a panicked voice rang out. It was the state preceptor, Huailin. After Luo Yi's accident, she immediately went to find Huailin. The latter rushed over without stopping, but he was still a step too late. It's over, it's all over. And Huailin's eyes suddenly narrowed, and he seemed to have lost all his thoughts. At this moment, he finally understood what despair was. Ingli Hao was the key to opening the 9 sacrificial altar, but now he was worse than a useless person. How could Nietian be so strong that he could beat Ingli Hao into a pile of meat paste? Nietian didn't hear Ingli Hao's reply. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and he gradually closed his hand, about to snap Ingli Hao's neck in the next moment. Nietian. At this moment, a weak voice suddenly sounded from below, and a figure slowly walked out. Her red hair fluttered in the wind, and she had a beauty that could topple cities. It was Mo Rushi. Rushi. Nietian's eyes trembled, and he directly appeared beside Mo Rushi in a flash. Nietian. Mo Rushi looked at Nietian, and her eyes seemed to be a little blurred. Rushi, what's wrong? Nietian saw that Mo Rushi's face was slightly flushed, and her forehead was covered with fine sweat, as if she was in great pain. He immediately sensed that something was wrong, and his face darkened. Nietian, Mo Rushi's body swayed, but there was a fanatical look in her eyes. She seemed to be unable to control her body, and waves of heat were released from her body, causing her whole body to become boiling hot. Bastard! Nietian's eyes slightly froze, and he immediately understood something. A huge killing intent rose from him, and he roared, and his whole body became ferocious. Chapter 980. In an instant, Nietian understood everything. His heart was filled with rage, and his expression became distorted. Ingli Hao, that bastard, actually used that kind of medicine on Mo Rushi. Unforgivable! Nietian roared furiously in his heart. His entire body was boiling, and his blood and chi were flowing in reverse, as if he wanted to destroy everything in front of him. Nietian. At this time, Mo Rushi hugged Nietian tightly. Her pretty face was flushed, and her body was boiling like fire. Her eyes were misty, releasing a soul-stirring temptation. At this time, the others already understood what was going on. Countless pairs of greedy eyes roamed around Mo Rushi. Just looking at Mo Rushi's appearance was enough to make them have lustful thoughts. All of you, close your eyes. When Nye Tian saw the looks of everyone, the anger in his heart burned even more. He roared and released a sword intent that filled the sky. The dazzling sword light shot out tens of thousands of meters away. Everyone felt their eyes tremble, and they almost subconsciously closed their eyes. Whoever dares to open their eyes will die. Nye Tian was incomparably domineering. The roar of a lion was like a thunderclap, and everyone felt an oppressive aura. Many people couldn't bear the pressure and directly vomited blood. Everyone witnessed Nye Tian cripple Ing Li Hao with a single sword strike. No one doubted his strength, and no one doubted his courage. If anyone dared to open their eyes again, Nye Tian would definitely kill them without hesitation. Nye Tian, I feel so hot. Mo Rushi hugged Nye Tian tightly, and her voice was already muffled. The little bit of reason she had told her not to do this, but her body was completely out of control. Nye Tian hugged Mo Rushi tightly, and his eyes were filled with a biting cold intent. At a certain moment, his eyes suddenly saw Ing Li Hao, who was like a pile of mud in midair, and a terrifying cold light shot out. Dying. Even if Ing Li Hao had become a complete waste, it still couldn't quell the anger in Nye Tian's heart. He roared and stretched out his hand and suddenly clenched it. Bang! There was an explosion in the void. Blood and flesh flew everywhere, and Ing Li Hao's corpse didn't even remain. The dignified crown prince of the snowy ice plains had died just like that. His death was so tragic that it was shocking to see. How? Almost at the same time, a mournful wail rang out, followed by a figure flying through the air. However, he was still a step too late and could only see a glaring bloody light. Your Majesty! When Huailin saw the figure that had suddenly appeared, his astonished eyes trembled. He hadn't expected the Emperor to show up. The appearance of the Emperor meant that all the Imperial Guards of the Ice Snow City would come out. Boom! 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 Before Huailin's voice fell, a terrifying killing intent suddenly rose from all directions. Countless black-clothed cultivators appeared in the sky. All of their auras joined together, and a momentum that could topple mountains and overturn seas surged down. There were tens of thousands of black-clothed cultivators, and every one of them was a Heaven Realm cultivator. When all of their Heaven Realm joined together, that kind of world-destroying aura was like heaven and earth collapsing. This was the Imperial Guards of the Ice Snow City, and they had come in full force for Nye Tian alone. Oh no, it's all over this time. And Huailin's eyes trembled violently, and his entire person was filled with despair. Ing Li Hao's death meant that the 9-yin altar could no longer be opened. And if Nye Tian also died, it would definitely enrage the head of all demons. At that time, there would only be one path for an Huailin death. But at this moment, an Huailin didn't dare to move. If he made any strange movements, the tens of thousands of Imperial Guards would definitely crush him to pieces in an instant. There were tens of thousands of Heaven Realm cultivators in the Ice Snow City's Imperial Guards. Even if Nye Tian was at the peak of the Heaven Realm, it would still be impossible for him to escape from the heavy encirclement of the Imperial Guards. Moreover, the Emperor was also here, and Nye Tian still had Mo Rushi to take care of. Boom! At this moment, Nye Tian's entire body surged with sword intent, which wrapped around Mo Rushi. At this moment, there was no trace of fear in his eyes, only the most extreme killing intent. Nye Tian's eyes emitted a cold and emotionless light, as if he despised and wanted to kill everything in his path. When he suddenly raised his eyes and looked at the sky, the monstrous aura of the tens of thousands of Imperial Guards slightly stagnated, as if it was about to collapse in an instant. However, Nye Tian was only one person, and he had to face tens of thousands of Heaven Realm cultivators. There was no one who didn't understand the logic of ants biting an elephant to death. Kill him for me. Emperor Ing Chunxiu stood tall in the sky, staring at Nye Tian with a murderous gaze. He spat out these words in a cold manner, and his surging killing intent was on the verge of bursting out. His son had been killed in the Crown Prince's residence in the Ice Snow City. How could he not be furious? Yes, the tens of thousands of Imperial guards shouted in unison, and their earth-shattering aura surged towards Niet Tian like a raging wave. What a terrifying aura! The crowd felt the terrifying aura and retreated one after another. The ice field under their feet couldn't stop cracking, as if the entire ice layer was falling. All of you, get out of my way! Standing in the center of the oppressive aura, Niet Tian's sword intent burst forth like an erupting volcano. His eyes shone with dazzling starlight as a surge of psychic power that could intimidate heaven and earth burst forth. All the Imperial guards felt a terrifying chill, and their surging aura actually stagnated. In their minds, they seemed to see a pair of cold eyes that looked down on the world, and a bone-chilling coldness that overlooked and destroyed everything. What a terrifying pair of eyes! And Huailin, who was tens of thousands of meters away, felt a soul-piercing mental oppression, and his heart trembled violently. This kid must die. At the same time, Chunxiu also shuddered, but the ferocity in his eyes intensified. Niet Tian was too terrifying, and he must be killed. Just as the Imperial Guard's aura was obstructed, Niet Tian took a step forward and soared into the sky. A sea of lightning appeared behind him, and a giant dragon soared into the sky. Amidst the earth-shattering rumble, countless Imperial Guards were directly crushed into meat paste. The sky was filled with blood, and the smell of blood permeated the air. If anyone's eyes widened, who would have thought that Niet Tian could resist the combined pressure of all the Imperial Guards, and even counterattack, killing hundreds and thousands of people with a single move? Those who stand in my way die. Niet Tian's eyes emitted a strange starlight, and waves of mental pressure burst out from his body. Killing intent surged from his body to the extreme. All the Imperial Guards suddenly came to their senses, and they felt their souls tremble inexplicably, and they subconsciously retreated. At this time, Niet Tian could feel the scorching flames emitting from Mo Rushi's body, and his entire person was in a dazed state. Leave! With a thought, Niet Tian didn't want to stay any longer, and he wanted to leave immediately. You want to leave after killing the Crown Prince? Dream on. At this time, Chunxiu's voice sounded, and his figure appeared in the sky like a mountain, standing in front of Niet Tian, blocking Niet Tian's path. Chapter 981. Niet Tian's whole body was full of killing intent, and the coldness in his eyes could make one's soul tremble. Chunxiu stared at Niet Tian viciously and didn't move half a step away. The person in front of him was the person who killed his son. How could he let the latter leave? The most important thing was that Niet Tian was too strong. If he let him go now, he would become the biggest threat to the Sub-Zero ice field in the future. Niet Tian stood in the air, the blood and chi all over his body burning crazily, and the terrible thunder will surge behind him. His whole body seemed to be on fire. At this moment, he directly burned his own blood and chi, urging all the sword will in his body to the strongest. What a terrible sword will! Everyone's eyes trembled. Niet Tian was like a sharp sword, and the whole world was covered by the terrible sword will. This sharp sword was the ruler of the whole world. You're only in the 6th tier of the sky human realm. Even if you burn your own blood and chi, you're still no match for me. Chunxiu felt bone-chilling, but he was in the 9th tier of the sky human realm and had great confidence in himself. He didn't believe that Niet Tian had the ability to fight with him. As his cold voice fell, a cloud of cold air was released from behind Chunxiu, and the space within thousands of meters around him was directly frozen. The bone-chilling cold spread out and attacked the violent sword in front of him. Destructive 3 swords, the second move, burning blood, and seizing soul. Niet Tian seemed to be completely unaware of how terrifying Chunxiu was. His lips moved as if he was mumbling to himself. However, with every word he said, the blood and chi around him became a bit stronger, and the sword will all over his body became a bit stronger. Chunxiu suddenly felt that something was wrong. His eyes trembled violently, and a sense of despair appeared. However, it was too late. Niet Tian moved, and attacked with his long sword. The bloody sword while behind him instantly condensed, and a huge blood-red killing sword appeared. It only shook a little, and the whole world shook violently, as if it was about to collapse. The forbidden move, the second move of the destructive three swords, the sword that Niet Tian burned his own blood and chi. Its power was unimaginable. Boom! The giant killing sword slashed down from the sky, and the space shook with a loud bang. The boundless sword intent instantly bloomed, and the monstrous momentum broke out like an avalanche. In an instant, the heavens and earth were filled with a terrifying, murderous aura. Everything would be destroyed under this murderous aura. Crack, crack, crack. In the next moment, the frozen space around Ing Chuanxiu cracked and collapsed. His power was completely unable to block Niet Tian's Heaven Destroyer sword. Ing Chuanxiu's eyes were filled with despair as a giant sword of slaughter descended from his eyes. Bang! With a muffled sound, Ing Chuanxiu's figure fell to the ground like a meteor, directly smashing into the bottomless ice layer. Boom! Almost at the same time, the blood-red sword of slaughter descended on the layer of ice. With a loud bang, the entire ground shook violently. The terrifying power exploded, and the layer of ice within a radius of tens of thousands of meters was directly cut and shattered. One slash, another slash. Niet Tian had directly killed the emperor of the snowy tundra. Everyone's hearts trembled. Tens of thousands of imperial guards watched as the emperor died, not daring to take even half a step forward. Their eyes were filled with intense fear, and Huailin was completely stunned. He could not imagine that Niet Tian could actually explode with such terrifying power. Drenched in blood, Niet Tian roared at the sky, scram. Everyone's eardrums shook and trembled at the same time. The imperial guards retreated like the tide, not daring to take even half a step forward. In the void, an old figure had just appeared, but he immediately shrank back. And Huailin's eyes trembled as he caught this scene perfectly. That figure was the ancestor of the Ying clan, the old monster who had been in seclusion for more than 100 years. However, after he appeared, he did not stop for even a moment, and immediately shrank back in fear. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the blood-red figure in the sky. At this moment, there was not shock in their eyes, but fear, deep fear. All of you scram. Niet Tian's body trembled, and the blood on his body scattered. He roared in a deep voice, "Anyone who comes within 10,000 meters of me will be killed without mercy." As his domineering voice fell, the crowd felt their souls tremble, and they immediately retreated in a frenzy. Niet Tian was too terrifying. First, he killed the crown prince, then crushed the imperial guards, and finally, he even killed the emperor. All of this was too terrifying. Niet Tianlin glanced around, and after making sure that everyone had left, he directly hugged Mo Rushi, and his figure moved, and they both entered a room. Mo Rushi hugged Niet Tian tightly, and her whole body was boiling like a flame, as if her whole body was on fire. Niet Tian, she had already lost her mind, and her lips were next to Niet Tian's ear, and her soul-stirring voice could make people lose their minds. Niet Tian knew that the meridians in Mo Rushi's body had already been saturated by the medicinal power, and coupled with the fact that she was the Nine Heavens Divine Phoenix's origin spirit, the medicinal power in her body would multiply. At this moment, the only way to save Mo Rushi was to use that method. He never thought that he would get Mo Rushi under such circumstances. Rushi. Niet Tian's breathing became slightly rapid, and then he sealed his own divine sense and hugged Mo Rushi tightly in his arms. After a moment of infatuation, Mo Rushi's divine sense gradually woke up. Mo Rushi nestled in Niet Tian's arms and did not speak, but the corners of her mouth curled up from time to time. Niet Tian hugged the girl in his arms tightly, and his eyes were filled with tenderness like water. "Rushi, do you blame me?" Suddenly, Niet Tian hugged the girl in his arms and asked softly. Although he had long regarded Mo Rushi as his wife, today's incident was an accident. Mo Rushi did not speak, and her face showed a moving shyness, but her little head on Niet Tian's chest shook desperately. She had long regarded herself as Niet Tian's woman, but the two had not yet married, so she had not broken through the barrier between them. At this time, not only did Mo Rushi not blame Niet Tian, but she was also very happy, and her delicate face showed a moving shyness. Niet Tian finally felt relieved and said softly, "Rushi, you are my wife from now on, and I won't let anyone hurt you." Mo Rushi nodded gently, and a warm feeling welled up in her heart, making her feel like the happiest woman in the world. That's right. At this time, Mo Rushi suddenly thought of something and exclaimed, "Uncle Qiushan, he was seriously injured in order to protect me. I wonder how he is now." "He should be fine." Niet Tian stood up and quickly put on his clothes. When the two walked out of the room, there was not a single person in the surrounding tens of thousands of meters, and in the sky tens of thousands of meters away, there were countless black-clothed martial artists standing in the void, but all of them had restrained their auras, not even daring to breathe loudly. These people were the Ice Snow City's Imperial Guards. Seeing this scene, Niet Tian's eyes slightly narrowed, and a cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and he said coldly, "Haven't you had enough of dying?" Niet Tian, Seeing this, Mo Rushi couldn't help but hold Niet Tian's arm tightly. Chapter 982. Niet Tian stared at the Imperial Guards in the sky, his eyes filled with disdain. Even though he hadn't fully recovered, and the backlash from the forbidden technique hadn't completely disappeared, he was fearless. No one could stop him. Mr. Niet Tian. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the sky. He seemed a bit nervous and spoke very respectfully. Imperial Advisor. Niet Tian's eyes narrowed. The first person to appear was Huailin, which surprised him. And Huailin waved his hand, and the Imperial Guards all backed away. Their auras were minimized, and they didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. Niet Tian froze, not knowing what Huailin meant. "Mr. Niet Tian, the Ice Snow Ancestor wants to talk to you." And Huailin was a bit nervous, afraid that Niet Tian would suddenly explode in anger. "Is it that coward who was scared away?" Niet Tianling sneered. When he was killing Ing Chuanxiu, he sensed a powerful aura flash by. Clearly, the Ice Snow Ancestor had been scared away. He guessed that the Ice Snow Ancestor and Huailin was talking about was the guy who had been scared away. And Huailin's expression was extremely ugly. Niet Tian's arrogance was beyond his expectations. "Yes, it is I." At that moment, an old and powerful voice sounded. Then, a figure appeared next to Huailin. It was an old man with white hair and a white beard. He had a smile on his face that was uglier than crying. "So it's you." Niet Tianling sneered, disdain in his eyes. This person was the ancestor of the Ying family, and yet he was scared away after seeing his own descendant killed. How disdainful. The Ice Snow Ancestor didn't mind Niet Tian's disdain at all. He forced a smile and bowed. "Mr. Niet Tian, I know everything about you and the Crown Prince." Niet Tian smiled faintly. "Now that you know everything, how do you want to deal with it?" His expression was so calm that it was frightening. The Ice Snow Ancestor smiled awkwardly. The Crown Prince was arrogant and domineering. He offended Mr. Niet Tian, so his death was his own fault. The Emperor was immoral and could not distinguish between right and wrong, so he deserved to die. If Mr. Niet Tian killed them, I will not blame you. Instead, I will thank Mr. for helping I clean up the household. The Ice Snow Ancestor's words stunned Niet Tian, and he could not react for a long time. Between the Crown Prince and the Emperor, one had only himself to blame, while the other deserved death. Both of them were the heirs of the Ice Snow Ancestor. The Ice Snow Ancestor had actually said such a thing to the murderer, Niet Tian. He was absolutely heartless. Niet Tian shook his head slightly and despised the Ice Snow Patriarch even more. "Mr. Niet Tian, from now on, you're the most esteemed guest of Sub-Zero Ice Field. Here, your status will be the same as mine. What do you think?" The Ice Snow Patriarch raised his voice, as if he were announcing a joyous occasion. Huailin was dumbfounded. He did not expect the Ice Snow Ancestor to say such a thing. He knew that the Ice Snow Ancestor was afraid of Niet Tian's strength and did not dare seek revenge. so he could only choose to reconcile. But the ice snow ancestor was expressing goodwill and even fawning over him. Was this really appropriate? It wasn't just Nietian. Even Huailin was looking at the ice snow ancestor with a strange look of disdain. All right, I'd like to hear how you want me to compete with you. Niet Tianling smirked, his face full of provocation. Of course, he had no intention of befriending the ice snow ancestor. The man did not even care about his own children, so why would he care about friends? Nietian only remembered that he needed to ask the ice snow ancestor about some things. The ice snow ancestor was taken aback. He did not expect Nietian to react in such a way. He laughed and said, Mr. Nietian, you can take anything you want from the entire sub-zero ice field. If I want your life, will you give it to me? Nietian asked cold. Well, the ice snow ancestor trembled visibly. He chuckled and said, Mr. Nietian, please don't joke like this. It's not funny at all. Nietian pursed his lips and said, I still have things to deal with. I'll come find you after I'm done. With these words, Nietian turned around to leave. Mr. Nietian, and Huailin called out at this moment, your friends are in the royal advisor's residence. They're fine now. Take me there. Nietian's eyes darkened. He had to make sure that Qiushan and the others were safe. Yes, and Huailin replied respectfully. You can come with us. Nietian looked at the ice snow ancestor, as if he was reprimanding a servant. The ice snow ancestor's face stiffened. He then squeezed out a smile, but it was a very strange one. A moment later, Nietian arrived at the imperial advisor's residence. After making sure that Qiushan, Zhou Xiao, and Zhang Chao were safe, Nietian's gloomy face relaxed a little. Mr. Qiushan has let you down. Qiushan had recovered quite a bit. He felt very guilty for not being able to protect Mo Rushi. You've done well. Nietian nodded. He knew very well that as long as Qiushan was still breathing, he wouldn't letting Li Hao take Mo Rushi away. However, he was too weak, so there was nothing he could do about it. Nietian told Qiushan and the others to rest, and went to the imperial advisor's residence's hall. He had some things to ask the ice snow ancestor. Nietian didn't stand on ceremony. He directly sat in the main seat, while the ice snow ancestor and Huailin sat below him. After taking a glance at Patriarch Ice Snow, Nietian went straight to the point and asked, Patriarch Ice Snow, may I know where Li Hao's frigid power comes from? Hearing Nietian's words, and Huailin's eyes immediately burned with passion. Li Hao was the key to opening the Nining altar. Now that he was dead, as long as they knew where the cold energy came from, they could still open the Nining altar. Nietian had only thought of this matter not long ago. At that time, he was completely enraged. He didn't care about these things at all and directly killed Li Hao. The ice snow ancestor was stunned. He seemed to be in a difficult position. After thinking for a while, he finally said, the cold energy in Crown Prince's body comes from the Ying clan's ancestral land. From the ancestral land. Nietian's eyes narrowed. He understood a lot in his heart. Previously, the corpse demon lord had said that Li Hao's cold energy was somewhat similar to the ice snow demon lord's aura. He even guessed that Li Hao had received the inheritance left behind by the ice snow demon lord. Now it seemed that the corpse demon lord's guess was most likely correct. The cold energy was not only related to the opening of the Nining altar, but also related to the unsealing of the ice forbidden stone. The Ying clan's ancestral land? Nietian's eyes flickered with a strange light. He said lightly, I want to go and have a look. His tone wasn't a question, it was a command. And Huailin was stunned. The Ying clan's ancestral land was forbidden to the royal family. How could outsiders be allowed to enter? Nietian's request seemed to be a bit too much. Chapter 983. Nietian smiled, rose to his feet, and said, All right, let's go. This time, Nietian brought Mo Rushi with him. Only then would he feel at ease. The ice snow ancestor didn't waste any more time and brought Nietian to the palace. The Ying family's ancestral ground was in the palace. After a while, the few of them descended from the sky and arrived at an extremely cold place. There were huge glaciers all around them, and the cold air was oppressive. Nietion's group was very strong, so they naturally didn't fear the cold. Rushi was the origin spirit of the nine heavens divine phoenix and possessed the inheritance of the ancient phoenix, so she didn't care about the cold either. Is this the place? Nietion's eyes flickered as he looked at the glacial canyon in front of him. He sensed a strong formation aura. Yes, the ancestral ground is in the glacial canyon. The ice snow ancestor's eyes flickered, and he seemed to smile at Nietion. Mr. Nietion, please. Huailin was slightly taken aback. He seemed to have sensed something amiss from the ice snow ancestor's smile. Nietion didn't seem to notice it at all. He nodded with a smile and walked straight into the glacial canyon. Nietion, you don't really think this old man will be friends with you, do you? The Sword Elder's voice suddenly rang out in Nietion's divine sense. Am I that stupid? Nietion smiled and retorted. Back at the Grand Tutor's residence, Nietion had seen the ice snow ancestor's every move. Nietion didn't even need to think to know that the ice snow ancestor wasn't a good person. He was definitely plotting something. Since the ice snow ancestor liked to pretend, Nietion would just play along with him. Right now, Nietion looked calm on the surface, but he was actually very vigilant. Nietion approached the canyon step by step as the bone-chilling cold became more and more intense. When he was only a few dozen meters away from the canyon, the chill was so terrifying that it could penetrate into his bones, causing them to crackle. Fortunately, Nietion's martial body was powerful, and the power of the stars was not afraid of any kind of attack. Ice Snow Ancestor, there seems to be a spiritual array protecting this place, right? Nietion stopped at the entrance of the valley and smiled. Of course. The Ice Snow Ancestor nodded with a smile. Shortly after, 2 spiritual array scrolls appeared in his hand. He slowly unfurled them, as if he wanted to break through the surrounding spiritual arrays. Be careful! Almost at the same time, the Sword Elder cried out in alarm. His voice became sharp. Ancestor Ice Snow opened the scroll, and a bone-chilling aura emanated out. In a flash, he tried to escape. However, Nietion reacted quickly. With a wave of his hand, he grabbed Patriarch Ice Snow. You're not going anywhere. Boom! In the next instant, the Ice Snow Ancestor unfurled the scroll in his hand completely. A tremendous force burst forth, causing the ice beneath his feet to tremble and crumble. Nietion felt a strange force surging out, as if there was a terrifying vortex below. In an instant, Nietion lost control of his body and fell down. In the face of danger, Nietion grabbed Rushi tightly. A moment later, the strange power disappeared and landed heavily on the layer of ice. Rushi, are you all right? Nietion steadied himself and checked Rushi's condition first. After confirming that she was not injured, he began to observe his surroundings. They seemed to have arrived in a world under a layer of ice. Apart from ice cubes and icicles, there was a bone-chilling cold all around. In front of Nietion was a long and narrow passage that led to an unknown place. It seemed that the Ice Snow Ancestor's spiritual array scroll had triggered something and created an eye of ice. Nietion and the others were sucked into the ice. Bastard! Not far away, a roar sounded. It was the Ice Snow Ancestor. Originally, the Ice Snow Ancestor wanted to imprison Nietion and the others in the Ying family's ancestral ground. He did not expect that Nietion would be on guard against him and drag him down as well. Ice Snow Ancestor, is this the Ying family's ancestral ground you were talking about? Nietion's eyes darkened with murderous intent. He could feel the coldness in the air. It was Ying Lihao's desolate frost power. This will be your burial ground. The Ice Snow Ancestor roared. A terrifying frost aura surged from behind him, making the surrounding coldness even more intense. Nietion's eyes narrowed. The Ice Snow Ancestor's Yuan spirit was also of the frost attribute. His strength was amplified by the layer of ice. Nietion, on the other hand, was suppressed by the power of frost, and his key meridians were greatly weakened. The Ice Snow Ancestor had personally witnessed Nietion's strength, so he was extremely fearful of him. However, he was very confident that he would be able to kill Nietion here. Are you finally going to show your true colors? Niet Tianling sneered, gesturing for Mo Rushi to step back. Under such circumstances, he couldn't be certain that he would be a match for the Ice Snow ancestor. Niet Tian, you kill my descendant. Do you really expect I to treat you like an honored guest? The Ice Snow ancestor screamed. His body trembled as the frost aura behind him condensed into a giant icicle that shot towards Niet Tian. Niet Tian's yuan meridians were being suppressed, and he didn't have any astral souls in his body. The Hellfire Crucible appeared behind him, and a stream of astral holy flames shot out like a snake. Kaboom! Ice and fire clashed, and the icicle shattered. A fiery light flashed past, and Ice Snow Patriarch was sent flying. What kind of power is this? The Ice Snow ancestor retreated a few steps, and his eyes widened in fear. Niet Tian's power was too strange. Even in the Ing clan's ancestral lands, he wasn't suppressed by the desolate cold energy. Oomph. Yeah, Tianling laughed, and a blazing figure appeared from the Hellfire Crucible behind him. It was his soul slave, Niet Xiao. The moment Niet Xiao appeared, the desolate cold power in the surrounding space seemed to have sensed a huge threat and instantly dispersed. The Ice Snow ancestor's eyes narrowed, and he felt a terrifying power pressing down on him. He lost control of his body, and he couldn't move at all. The power of loss. In the next instant, the Ice Snow ancestor finally came to his senses. The fear in his eyes reached its peak, and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. A heavenly emperor. The Ice Snow ancestor didn't expect that Niet Tian would suddenly release a heavenly emperor. Who exactly was Niet Tian? Why would he have a heavenly emperor protecting him? Niet Tian walked over step by step with a cold smile on his face. His strength had not fully recovered, and he was being suppressed here. Thus, he didn't want to waste time with the Ice Snow ancestor and let Niet Xiao out. The current Niet Xiao, the evil aura around him had dissipated, and his eyes became clearer, as though he was a newborn baby. Sword Elder used the power of sword runes to erase the soul energy in his body, and it was effective. Chapter 984. Don't worry, I won't kill you, not yet. Niet Tian smiled faintly, but his eyes were filled with killing intent. As he spoke, a sword will whizzed out and struck the ancestor's abdomen. Pong! The ancestor flew backwards, spitting out a mouthful of blood as he sat on the ice like a pile of mud. Now, you're much more obedient. Niet Tian smiled evilly. He had destroyed the ancestor's yuan meridians in that attack. The Ice Snow ancestor's eyes widened, and his eyes were filled with shock. He had never expected Niet Tian to be so vicious, to destroy his yuan meridians. Niet Tian let Niet Xiao return to the Hellfire Crucible, and it disappeared. He could feel that Niet Xiao still had some of the original body's soul power, and if he used it recklessly, there was a risk of losing control. The soul power in Niet Xiao's body is almost gone. Give me half a month, and I will be able to refine him to perfection. The Sword Elder chuckled, satisfied with Niet Xiao's performance. Niet Tian nodded. With the Corpse Devil Lord and the Sword Elder in his body, things were much simpler. And Huailin, are you still not coming out? Niet Tian suddenly spoke. Lord Niet Tian. Immediately afterwards, a figure walked out of the crowd with a respectful expression. Niet Tian knew that Huailin had fallen into the Eye of Frost and had been observing from the shadows. He was extremely cunning, and the reason why he did not show himself was because he wanted to see the result of the battle between Niet Tian and the ancestor. Whoever won, he would stand on their side. Niet Tian had revealed Niet Xiao, and the other reason was to intimidate Huailin. At that moment, Huailin finally knew how strong Niet Tian was. He had never seen a heavenly emperor in his life, and Niet Xiao's appearance had shocked him. Niet Tian ignored Huailin. He glanced at the Ice Snow ancestor and said coldly, "Let's go. Take me to the desolate cold legacy." The Ice ancestor struggled to get up, not daring to have any evil thoughts. As they walked forward, Niet Tian realized that the world under the ice was so huge. It seemed to be no smaller than the Ice Snow City. There were ice caves everywhere like a messy big net. The Ice Snow ancestor clearly knew this place very well. He brought Nyation and the others to a spacious area. Nyation could feel that the surrounding desolate cold energy was getting stronger and stronger. Even his elemental meridians had stopped circulating. There seemed to be a huge square in front of him, and at the center of the square, there was a black ball of light floating in the air, constantly rotating. As the profound black sphere of light spun, streams of desolate cold power were released, spreading out in all directions. This is the desolate legacy. The Ice Snow ancestor looked at the profound black sphere of light and said weakly. Nyation's eyes trembled slightly. This was indeed the same power as Ing Li Hao's, but it was hundreds or thousands of times stronger than Ing Li Hao's desolate cold power. Master! At this moment, the corpse demon lord's voice rang out, trembling slightly. This is the Ice Snow Devil King's legacy. The corpse demon lord was very familiar with the Ice Snow Devil King more than 100 years ago. Of course, he could distinguish the latter's aura. The corpse demon lord's eyes flickered, seemingly a little sad. The Ice Snow Devil King had left behind his legacy. This undoubtedly meant that he was dead. The death of an old friend left a bitter taste in corpse demon lord's mouth. What a powerful legacy! Nyation was a little surprised. He could feel a strong power from the desolate legacy, and it was an extremely and extremely cold power. When a martial artist absorbed the legacy, they had to have a compatible attribute. If a martial artist with the ice attribute wanted to absorb the fire attribute inheritance, it would be tantamount to courting death. The power in Nyation's body was the power of stars, but he could not figure out what attribute it was. At the same time, he also had the thunder attribute sword essence and dragon chi, but they were all extremely strong and yang powers, so he could not fuse with the desolate legacy. It was no exaggeration to say that if Nyation tried to fuse with the desolate legacy, he would definitely explode under the collision of the desolate cold power and the thunder attribute sword essence. Mo Rushi was the ninth heaven phoenix, and she also had the fire attribute power, so she could not fuse with the desolate cold power. Nyation thought about everyone around him. Perhaps only Yang Zixiao, who had the 100 virtual body and integrated with the 10,000-year ice spirit, had a slight chance of absorbing the desolate legacy. Unfortunately, Yang Zixiao was far away in the 3,000 small worlds, so it was impossible for her to come here. Lord Nyation. At this time, the Ice Snow ancestor seemed to know what Nyation was thinking. So he suddenly said, "The power of the desolate legacy is extremely terrifying. Almost everyone in the Ing family was born with the ice attribute martial body, but in the past hundreds of years, only Ing Li Hao has successfully absorbed a trace of the desolate legacy." "What are you trying to say?" Nyation frowned and said coldly. "You want to find someone who can absorb the desolate legacy? Impossible." The Ice Snow ancestor gathered his courage and said in a deep voice. He was already a dead man. Even if Nyation did not kill him, he would not live for long, so his state of mind was a lot calmer. "Are you provoking me by saying this now?" Nyation was already annoyed, so he could not help but feel a little angry after the Ice Snow ancestor said this. The desolate legacy was right in front of him, but he could not fuse with it, so of course he was unhappy. The Ice Snow ancestor lowered his head and said no more. "No matter what, let's take the desolate legacy away first." Nyation thought for a moment and said in a deep voice. Although he could not find someone who could absorb the desolate legacy, Nyation wanted to take it away first. But taking the desolate legacy away was not easy. There was a terrifying killing formation set up everywhere. If anyone came within a kilometer of the desolate legacy, the killing formation would be activated. "Master, this is the killing formation set up by the Ice Snow Devil King before he died. I can break it," the Corpse King said and came out. And Huailin and the Ice Snow ancestor were surprised to see a mouse suddenly appear. The Corpse King did not say anything. His body released balls of black gas that looked like long snakes rushing into the square. As the spirit devouring chi entered, the whole square slightly shook. Formation runes appeared, but the spirit devouring chi slowly seeped in and destroyed them. The others were stunned. No one had expected that an inconspicuous mouse would be able to break through such a huge formation. Nietion watched nervously. As soon as the formation was broken, he would take the desolate legacy. Boom! After a while, a terrifying sound came from the ice, and the entire protective formation broke. Roar! 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 Almost at the same time, a terrifying roar came from under the ice. It sounded like a dragon's roar. Chapter 985. Demonic Dragon of the Demon Race. Nietion was certain that the roar coming from beneath the ice was from the demonic dragon of the demon race. In his previous life, Nietion had killed countless demonic dragons of the demon race, so he was very familiar with the roar of this kind of spiritual beast. Demonic Dragon of the Demon Race was a rank 9 spiritual beast. It was said that it was a subspecies of the ancient divine dragon that had lost its divinity and became an ordinary spiritual beast. Oh no! Corpse Lord Demon King also sensed that something was amiss. He immediately disappeared and returned to the Chaos original coffin. Damn Frost Devil King! He used the Guardian spiritual formation to freeze the 9 demonic dragons. Now that the spiritual formation is broken, the demonic dragons are awakening. Corpse Lord Demon King was still mourning the death of Frost Devil King a moment ago, but now he was cursing. Nietion finally understood what was going on, and his entire body tensed up. Frost Devil King was indeed very cunning. The Guardian spiritual formation was just a facade. The real thing protecting the desolate inheritance was the 9 demonic dragons sealed beneath the spiritual formation. The demonic dragons were rank 9 spiritual beasts, and they were the strongest among the rank 9 spiritual beasts. They were far stronger than ordinary heavenly emperors. Even at his peak, Nietion would find it difficult to deal with the 9 demonic dragons of the demon race. Nietion, what happened? Mo Rushi saw the beads of sweat on Nietion's forehead and couldn't help but exclaim. She rarely saw him in such a panic. Everyone retreat. Nietion didn't have time to explain. With a deep bellow, he stomped the ground and dashed towards the center of the square. His figure was very fast. He made a grabbing motion in the air and put away the desolate inheritance. Bang! 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 Almost at the same time, the ice surface suddenly exploded. 9 giant figures broke out of the ice, and the entire ice layer shook as if it was about to collapse. The 9 giant figures suddenly appeared and wrapped around Nietion. The 9 figures were thousands of meters long. They had the bodies of giant snakes, but they had 4 limbs. Their skin was covered with coarse scales. From afar, it looked very similar to the legendary divine dragon, but its head did not have the majesty of a divine dragon. Instead, it looked very ugly, similar to a lizard. This is... And Hualien drew in a sharp breath at the sight of the 9-headed demonic dragon. The enormous pressure coming from it almost stopped him from breathing. Run! And Hualien yelled, then took to his heels. Mo Rushi was also unable to withstand the powerful pressure and couldn't help but retreat. The one who suffered the most was the Ice Snow ancestor. He was crushed to death by the overwhelming pressure and turned into a bloody light. Nietion, who was surrounded by 9 demonic dragons of the demon race, couldn't help but shiver, and his back was drenched in cold sweat. Master, they've been sealed in ice for more than 100 years, and they've just woken up. Their strength hasn't recovered yet. Hurry up and kill them. Corpse Luo Demon King's voice rang out, filled with madness. Nietion's breathing became slightly rapid, but his eyes became firm in an instant. He released all the sword essence in his body and directly slashed out the heaven slash sword in his hand. The mighty sword light rolled and pressed down. Pong! The sword light swept past, and with a muffled sound, the head of a demonic dragon was directly chopped off. Blood rained down like a torrential rain, and the huge body of the demonic dragon fell to the ground. Nietion's eyes flickered, and he became even calmer. These demonic dragons have been sealed in ice for too long, and their strength couldn't recover in an instant. This was the best time for Nietion to strike. Without hesitation, Nietion slashed down again. The dazzling sword light drew a bloody line, and another demonic dragon was killed on the spot. Roar, roar, roar. However, right at this moment, the other demonic dragons became enraged, and they all roared angrily. Their bodies released a violent aura, and their blood-red eyes stared at Nyetian, sending shivers down one's spine. Damn it! Nyetian felt the demonic dragon's aura rising rapidly, and his eyes narrowed slightly. His whole body released an even more violent sword essence. In the next instant, a demonic dragon's huge body rolled, and it madly rushed towards Nyetian, seeking death. Nyetian's eyes flashed with a cold light. He slashed out with his sword, and the huge sword light smashed onto the demonic dragon's head, slicing off half of its head. Illo! The demonic dragon cried out miserably, and its body smashed onto the ice surface like a mountain. At the same time, another demonic dragon's attack descended, smashing onto Nyetian's celestial domain, causing him to fly out and smash onto a gigantic ice wall. Pooh! Nyetian spat out a mouthful of blood, his face as white as paper. His body had not fully recovered, and facing so many demonic dragons, it was too much for him. Master, quickly use your soul slaves. We cannot let these demonic dragons recover their strength. Corpse Devil Lord shouted. His voice was extremely sharp. With a thought, the hellfire furnace appeared behind Nyetian, and Nyetchio's figure appeared once again. Nyetian naturally knew that if any of these demonic dragons recovered their strength, it would be a disaster for him. Kill these beasts! Nyetian bellowed and roared at Nyetchio. Bang! Nyetchio's aura surged crazily. The starry sky sank, flames around him turned into a sea of fire. He did not make any sound and directly slapped out with his palm, causing a flaming palm to appear in the air and roll out. Bang! Bang! Two muffled sounds came out under the palm. Two demonic dragons were instantly killed. Who? Nyetian heaved a sigh of relief. Nyetchio had the strength of a heavenly emperor, and before these demonic dragons recovered their strength, they were roughly at the peak of the celestial realm and were not Nyetchio's match. Demonic dragons of the demon race, rank 9 spirit beasts, their bodies and spirit cores are extremely good stuff. Nyetian looked at the corpses of the demonic dragons on the ground, and his lips curled into a smile. As long as he killed these demonic dragons, Nyetian might even be able to use the spirit cores to refine rank 9 spirit pills. Bang! Bang! Another 3 muffled sounds came out. Nyetchio's palm killed one, and in the blink of an eye, another 3 demonic dragons were killed. Nyetchio had killed 5 demonic dragons. Adding on the 3 that Nyetian had killed, in the blink of an eye, there was only 1 left out of the 9 demonic dragons. Roar! But just at that moment, the demonic dragon roared out in anger. The aura around its body became extremely berserk, and a layer of terrifying aura enveloped its entire body. Shit! Nyetian screamed. The demonic dragon had recovered to the heavenly emperor realm. The demonic dragon's body tumbled, releasing a powerful aura. Its blood-red eyes locked onto Nyetchio and suddenly pressed down. Nyetchio did not dodge. The sea of flames behind him surged up. His entire being was like a fireball as he whizzed forward, choosing to clash head-on with the demonic dragon. 1 man and 1 dragon. The 2 figures approached each other in the void and finally clashed. Rumble! A muffled explosion sounded out, causing the entire ice layer to tremble, causing the space to become sluggish. Following that, a terrifying shockwave spread out from the center of the collision, causing the surrounding ice walls to instantly crumble. In the air, the scarlet-red figure flew out, smashing onto the ground. Chapter 986. Just as Nyetchio was sent flying, Nyetian's figure appeared on top of the spirit demon dragon's head, his entire body releasing a terrifying sword concept. He slashed down fiercely. Bang! The sword concept was extremely sharp, directly piercing through the spirit demon dragon's head. The terrifying sword chi blossomed out, and with a bloodlight, the spirit demon dragon's head exploded, blood and flesh splattering everywhere. Niet Tian extended his palm out, holding onto a black spirit nucleus. It was the spirit nucleus of the spirit demon dragon. It was roughly the size of a fist and released a berserk aura. The last spirit demon dragon was finally killed. Niet Xiao. Niet Tian's figure descended and appeared beside Niet Xiao. The latter's figure had become much dimmer, as though he was about to disappear. With a thought, Niet Tian sent Niet Xiao back into the hellfire furnace. Sword Elder, is he all right? Niet Tian sensed that Niet Xiao's aura had become extremely weak and asked worriedly. He's heavily injured. Sword Elder nodded his head and said, he was originally a spirit body, and after his original spirit power was erased, his body was completely formed from the starry sky's saint flames. The attack just now caused him great injuries, and if he wants to recover, he will need at least a few months. Yes. Niet Tian nodded his head. He could not let Niet Xiao out for the next period of time. In truth, until now, Niet Tian was still unclear whether Niet Xiao was a person or a weapon without emotions. Niet Xiao, who had his spirit power erased, was not a person, but a weapon, emotionless and emotionless, with only power. The last spirit demon dragon had recovered to the heavenly emperor realm, and without Niet Xiao, Niet Tian would not have been able to kill it. After killing all the spirit demon dragons, Niet Tian's body had become extremely weak. His face was as white as paper, and he was at his limit. Niet Tian, are you all right? Mo Rushi walked over, her face revealing anxiousness. Niet Tian laughed indifferently, expressing that he was fine. The battle had exhausted him of his spirit power, and he needed to rest. The corners of Niet Tian's eyes twitched as he locked his gaze on Huailin. On Huailin, do you think there's something wrong with me? Of course, he knew what Huailin was thinking. He wanted to take advantage of Niet Tian's weakened state to suddenly kill him. Of course I'm fine. And Huailin was stunned for a moment before he reacted. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead, and his back felt cold. Just now, when he saw Niet Tian's pale face and weak aura, he did have evil thoughts in his heart. Niet Tian's strength was far beyond Huailin's expectations. And Huailin wasn't a fool. He could vaguely guess that Niet Tian's identity was extremely terrifying. It was definitely not as simple as it seemed. Just the strength that Niet Tian had displayed just now was no weaker than the 10,000 demon dragon head. Could such a person be someone from the 10,000 demon dragon abyss? And Huailin's restless thoughts only existed for a moment. But he didn't dare to have any delusions after hearing Niet Tian's question. Niet Tian was too strong. An emaciated camel was still bigger than a horse. And Huailin didn't dare to risk his life. Niet Tian smiled indifferently and ignored Huailin. A moment later, Niet Tian extracted all the demonic dragon's spiritual cores and cut out the demonic dragon's heart. This was where the demonic dragon's essence lay. As for the demonic dragon's corpse, Niet Tian wasn't interested, and Huailin waited until Niet Tian was done before asking, Lord Niet Tian, the Ice Snow ancestor is dead. How are we going to get out of here? We're standing at the exit. How do you think we're going to get out? Niet Tian laughed and looked up at the sky. The ice valley below them was the exit of the Ying family's ancestral land. Previously, it was protected by a spiritual formation and couldn't be entered. Now that the spiritual formation was broken, they could leave directly. And Huailin was stunned, and his expression turned ugly. It seemed that Niet Tian's perception was extremely strong. He could see through everything with a single glance. The three of them didn't waste any more time. They shot into the sky and rushed out of the world under the ice. Crack! Bang! The ice was broken, and yet Tian and the others appeared in a remote corner of the Imperial Palace. And Huailin, I'll return to the Imperial Advisor's estate first. I'll leave the matters of the Imperial Palace to you, Niet Tian said, and left with Mo Rushi. The situation in the Sub-Zero Glacier had completely changed. The Crown Prince was dead, the Emperor was dead, and the Ancestor was dead. And Huailin wasn't a fool. This was the best time for him to take the Imperial Advisor's position. Sometimes, the difference between the Imperial Advisor and the Emperor was just a matter of luck. Niet Tian could tell that Huailin was a shrewd person. He would definitely be able to stabilize the situation in the sub-zero glacier. Soon, Nyetian and Mo Rushi returned to the Imperial Advisor's estate. Nyetian urgently needed to recover his strength, so he went straight to his room. Demon Dragon's Heart. Closing the door, Nyetian didn't rest immediately. Instead, he took out a Demon Dragon's Heart. It was the size of a human head and was completely black. However, it had a crystalline luster to it. A draconic aura was released from it, filling the entire room. This aura is very similar to draconic aura. It seems like the demonic dragon is really a subspecies of the divine dragon race. Nyetan murmured as he sensed the draconic aura in the room. In his previous life, he didn't have a dragon vein in his body, so he didn't have a deep understanding of draconic aura. But now, he was sure that the demonic dragon was a descendant of the dragon race. The demonic dragon is a rank 9 spirit beast. The demon dragon's heart is the source of the demonic dragon's energy. As long as I can absorb the energy from the demon dragon's heart, my strength will increase once again. Nyetian faintly smiled as the three-legged profound cauldron appeared in front of him. At this moment, he didn't immediately send out a message. Instead, he prepared to refine the demon dragon's heart and extract draconic aura. Taking a deep breath, Nyetian swallowed a few spirit pills and slightly recovered his energy. He didn't wait any longer and started to circulate the 9 heavenly fire technique. The three-legged profound cauldron ignited with blazing leaf fire. Nyetian directly threw the 9 demon dragons' hearts into the three-legged profound cauldron and focused on the changes in the demon dragon's heart. Right now, Nyetian's strength was at the 6th layer of the heaven-human realm. His body had awakened 260 billion stars, and his mental power had reached rank 86. Adding on the fact that his divine sense had fused with the profound cauldron divine rune, his control over fire was not much different from his previous life. The three-legged profound cauldron was one of the 10 great ancient pill cauldrons. It had a great effect on fire. Even though the demon dragon's heart was extremely difficult to refine, it still began to slowly melt in the cauldron. Waves of aura surged in the room. The draconic aura was so dense that it almost liquefied. Just who is this brat? When the Sword Elder saw that Nyetian's mental power was so strong and his control over fire was so skillful, he couldn't help but feel puzzled. He's clearly only 20 years old, but his strength in all aspects, even those martial artists who have lived for hundreds of years would find it hard to reach. Nyetian, just what secret is hidden in your body? Chapter 987. It took Nyetian 3 days to refine the draconic chi. 3 days later, he walked out of his room with a few bottles in his hand. Inside were crystal-clear liquids that glowed with rainbow colors under the sunlight. Demonic Dragon's Liquid. Although it's a little inferior to the purest draconic chi, it's not that far off. Nyetian smiled happily. In 3 days, he refined the 9 hearts of the demonic dragon and refined 3 bottles of demonic dragon's liquid, which was even more precious than dragon blood. Nyetian had already made up his mind. Of the 3 bottles of demonic dragon liquid, he would take 1 for himself, give 1 to Qiushan, and leave the last one for Raindrop and Xinya. If Rui Qinyu woke up from the forbidden ice stone, the blood in her body would still be there. The demonic dragon's liquid was even more terrifying than dragon blood, and it would be enough to help her suppress the blood. Nyetian had basically recovered, but refining the draconic chi had consumed too much of his mental power. Once his mental power recovered, he would drink the demonic dragon's liquid. As for the 9 demonic dragon cores, Nyetian didn't want to use them yet. He had to wait until his mental power reached level 90 before using them to refine 9 grade, 9 spirit pills. Nyetian. Just as he walked out of the room, Mo Rushi's figure appeared with a bright smile on her delicate face. She was very happy to see that Nyetian was fine. Nyetian reached out and embraced Mo Rushi in his arms, smelling her warm fragrance. "Nya, Lord Nyetian." Right at this moment, an untimely voice sounded. An Huailin appeared with a panicked expression, as if something big had happened. Nyetian was slightly stunned. Could it be that Huailin couldn't stabilize the ice-snow city? What happened? Nietion's expression sank as he asked cold. Lord, something happened to the Nine altar. And Huailin panicked, and his body was drenched in cold sweat. Nietion's eyes narrowed, and his expression became even more gloomy. The Nine altar was the key to helping Mo Rushi awaken her sage body, and it would recover very soon. How could something happen to it at this time? Rushi, give this spiritual liquid to Qiushan and let him consume it. Nietion took out a bottle of demonic dragon's elixir and handed it to Mo Rushi. He then said to Huailin, "Take me to the altar." "Yes." And Huailin replied respectfully before leaving with Nietion. Mo Rushi was very nervous, but she did not follow him. She knew that she was too weak, and it would be useless for her to follow Nietion. She would only be a burden to him. A short while later, Nietion and Huailin arrived at the Nine altar. Nietion raised his head to look at the altar in midair. The altar was actually revolving crazily, and a huge amount of energy was constantly surging out, as if it was completely out of control. "What's going on?" Nietion asked with a gloomy expression. If the Nine altar continued to revolve at this speed, it wouldn't be long before the altar's energy would be completely drained. I don't know either. After the last batch of sage bones was placed into the altar, it seemed to have triggered some kind of power within the altar, and the entire altar has completely gone out of control. And Huailin's forehead was covered in cold sweat. This was the altar that he had spent decades maintaining, and such a dense amount of energy was draining away just like that. It was as if his heart was being cut open. Blood-slaughtering spirit. A person suddenly came to Nietion's mind. His eyes darkened, and his divine sense swept over. In the space inside the altar, a black light was revolving rapidly, and it was constantly absorbing the altar's energy. It really is that guy. The corner of Nietion's eyes twitched, and he immediately understood. It was the blood-slaughtering spirit that caused the altar to go out of control, and it wanted to absorb the entire altar's energy. It's that blood demon. And Huailin also realized in an instant, and he exclaimed, "Blood-slaughtering spirit, get out here." At this time, Nietion roared, and his aura surged. His figure soared into the sky, and he directly slashed down with his sword. A terrifying sword shadow descended on the Nine altar. As the sword fell, the entire altar froze for a moment, and the speed at which it revolved immediately slowed down. "Brat, it's you again." The blood-slaughtering spirit's figure appeared. He was extremely angry that his absorption of the altar's energy had been interrupted by Nietion. "Blood-slaughtering spirit, the sage bones are enough to restore the altar. There's no need for you to exist anymore." Nietion's figure stood in the air, and he spoke in a cold voice, and his entire body was filled with killing intent. "Is that so?" The blood-slaughtering spirit let out a strange cry, and the black light gradually began to change, condensing into a blurry black human figure. Before, the blood-slaughtering spirit was just a demonic ghost face, but after absorbing the altar's energy, it seemed to be condensing into a complete human figure. What a powerful aura! Nietion's eyes narrowed slightly. The blood-slaughtering spirit's aura was much stronger than it was a few days ago. It seemed to have reached the peak of the ninth sky realm. "Brat, you're just an annoying fly. I'll kill you right now." Every time the blood-slaughtering spirit appeared, Nietion would run out and cause trouble. He was like a maggot that could not be gotten rid of. As the cold voice fell, a black light appeared in the void, shooting out like a sharp arrow. Suddenly, a murderous aura spread out, pressing down on Nietion. The power of the blood demon was very strange, with a terrifying bloody aura. The aura of death was extremely dense, giving people a suffocating pressure. Nietion's eyes narrowed, and he was not afraid at all. He raised his long sword, and the power of thunder filled the space, causing the whole world to tremble. The next moment, the power of thunder gathered into a terrifying sword shadow and suddenly slashed down. Boom! The void shook violently as the two powers collided, and a terrifying power spread out in all directions. Nyetion's figure trembled, and he was forced back dozens of meters. Then he felt a tightness in his chest, and he coughed up a mouthful of blood. On the other hand, the blood-slaughtering spirit was even worse off. The human-shaped shadow that he had painstakingly condensed was directly dispersed by the power of thunder, leaving only a demonic face floating in the void, its black hole-like eyes emitting hatred. The blood-slaughtering spirit's strength had indeed increased to the ninth sky realm, but unfortunately, Nyetion's power of thunder was too strong for him to handle. Huailin was dumbfounded. He had thought that the battle between Nyetion and the blood-slaughtering spirit would be a fierce one, but he did not expect the two to fight so fiercely with just one move. Blood-slaughtering spirit, prepare to die. Nyetion wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and the 9 dragon veins began to operate crazily. A sea of thunder appeared behind him, and the surging power of thunder shook the world. The purple-gold lightning interweaved in the void to form a huge lightning net, and it directly pressed down on the blood-slaughtering spirit. The lightning net released a terrifying aura, and the blood demon chi around the blood-slaughtering spirit was completely suppressed, and he could not resist at all. "Don't kill me." The blood-slaughtering spirit felt the approaching aura of death, and he screamed, "The sky demon Saintus is still in my hands. If you kill me, she will die with me." "Eugene!" Nyetion's eyes narrowed slightly. The lightning net paused for a moment, and then immediately covered the blood-slaughtering spirit, but it did not tighten. Chapter 988. Eugene hadn't appeared since the destruction of the heavenly demon cult. As expected, she was in the hands of the bloody spirit. The net of lightning enveloped the bloody spirit, and the terrifying power of lightning wreaked havoc in the air. At this moment, as long as Nyetion willed it, he could kill the bloody spirit on the spot. "Where is she?" Nyetion's eyes were dark and cold. Eugene was the holy maiden of the heavenly demon cult. She couldn't be considered a friend of Nyetion's, but she had entered the forbidden land of wind and cloud with him and wasn't a bad person. She had only been used by Yuruchuan. If he could save Eugene, Nyetion would naturally do so. "I want you to promise that if I tell you where the holy maiden is, you'll let me go," the bloody spirit said carefully, trembling and withdrawing its black light. "Umph." Tianling sneered. The net of lightning suddenly trembled, as if it was about to fall down and destroy the bloody spirit. "Spirit slaughter, do you think you're qualified to negotiate with me at this point?" Nyetion said indifferently, killing intent brimming in his eyes. He would save Eugene, but he definitely wouldn't accept the bloody spirit's threat. Moreover, Nyetion believed that the bloody spirit might only know where Eugene was, but that Eugene might not be in his hands. If the bloody spirit had really captured Eugene, why didn't he borrow her body to be reborn? Why did he need to absorb the power of the 9 in altar? "Speak, where is Eugene?" Nyetion asked again, his killing intent even more obvious. She's in my master's hands," the bloody spirit shouted when it sensed Nyetion's killing intent. "Master?" Nyetion's eyes darkened and his expression darkened. "Who is your master?" he asked in a cold voice. He hadn't expected the bloody spirit to have a master. I can't say," the bloody spirit said in a trembling voice. "Speak." A cold light flashed in Nyetion's eyes. The net of lightning tightened, and the bloody spirit's black light became even dimmer. It's Lin Feng," the bloody slaughter spirit blurted out. "Lin Feng." Nyetion was stunned, and his expression stiffened. Eugene had been taken away by Lin Feng. This was something he could accept because Lin Feng had always protected Eugene in the forbidden land of wind and cloud. But what did the bloody slaughter spirit mean when it said that Lin Feng was its master? Nyetion's eyes darkened as he locked onto the bloody slaughter spirit. He could tell that the latter was not lying. "You said that Lin Feng is your master. Why?" Nyetion asked in a deep voice. Back in the forbidden land of wind and cloud, Nyetion had suspected Lin Feng's identity, but after Lin Feng had helped him kill Yuruchuan and seemed to be Lin Feng's brother, Nietion no longer suspected him. Nietion couldn't understand why the bloody slaughter spirit was saying that Lin Feng was its master. Master! Right at this moment, the bloody slaughter spirit suddenly became extremely frightened and shouted nervously. However, before it could finish its sentence, a strange power directly appeared. Bang! With a muffled sound, the ball of black light suddenly exploded and vanished into thin air. Nietion was taken aback by the sudden turn of events, and his expression froze. And Huailin was also stunned. He had no idea what was going on. It seemed that the bloody slaughter spirit had sensed something and killed itself. After a while, Nietion came to a realization and said in a grim voice, "This is the power of some kind of contract." A moment ago, a strange power had appeared out of nowhere and killed the bloody slaughter spirit. Nietion felt the binding power of a contract, just like the soul blood contract between him and the corpse demon king. He could kill the corpse demon king with a single thought. The power of a contract was terrifying. Lin Feng, did you kill the bloody slaughter spirit? Nietion murmured to himself. He was even more confused. It seemed that Nietion had underestimated Lin Feng from the very beginning. The master of the bloody slaughter spirit. Lin Feng, who are you? Nietion felt a headache coming on. He couldn't figure it out, so he forced himself to stop thinking about it. Eugene was in Lin Feng's hands. He didn't know what Lin Feng wanted to do to her. Sighing softly, Nietion landed on the ground. The altar of 9 resumed its normal operation speed, and the power of the saint's bones was slowly absorbed by the altar. Lord Nietion, this is the last batch of saint's bones. As long as the altar absorbs the power of this batch of saint's bones, it will recover. And Huailin came to Nietion's side and said solemnly. Nietion nodded. However, he was currently facing a very troublesome problem, which was how to activate the altar. It seemed that the bloody slaughter spirit's blood demon power could activate the altar's power. Unfortunately, the bloody slaughter spirit was already dead. Nietion had the desolate inheritance, but he couldn't activate the power of the inheritance. It was a bit troublesome. And Huailin, how long will it take for the altar of 9 to recover? Nietion asked. He wanted to know how long he had to prepare. And Huailin had said that it would take about a month, but Nietion didn't believe him. Half a month, and Huailin said after hesitating for a while. Half a month. Nietion furrowed his eyebrows. It seemed that he didn't have much time left. And Huailin, I'm not from the abyss of demons, Nietion suddenly said after thinking for a while. This, and Huailin was stunned. He was slightly surprised. Nietion, however, smiled faintly, his expression calm. Actually, it didn't matter whether he was from the abyss of demons or not. And Huailin had already seen his strength, and that was the most important thing. And Huailin had already suspected Nietion's identity, but he didn't dare to say it out loud. Lord Nietion, I will stand on your side. And Huailin was very smart. He immediately expressed his willingness to stand on Nietion's side. Everyone knew that there would be a huge battle between Nietion and the abyss of demons at the 9 altar. Hence, Huailin had to choose between the two sides. And Huailin, you are a smart man. I won't keep you in suspense. Since Nietion's identity had already been exposed, he had nothing to fear. He said directly, as long as you help me obtain the 9 altar, I will make you the ruler of the Sub-Zero ice field. I will also find a way to help you advance to the Heavenly Emperor realm. What do you think? Advance to the Heavenly Emperor realm? And Huailin was stunned. He couldn't help but swallow. If someone else had made such a promise to him, he would have thought that the person was crazy. However, Nietion was different. He had seen a Heavenly Emperor realm powerhouse in Nietion's body before. Lord Nietion, I am willing to do my best to help you obtain the 9 altar. And Huailin will follow Lord Nietion's lead. And Huailin knelt on one knee in front of Nietion and said in a deep voice, Very good. Nietion smiled faintly and gestured for Huailin to stand up. With Huailin's help, Nietion had a higher chance of winning the 9 altar. Following that, Nietion didn't waste any more time. He immediately left and returned to his room. The 9 altar needs the extreme and extreme cold energy to activate. The inheritance of desolation contains the extreme and extreme cold energy. How can I control the inheritance of desolation? Nyation furrowed his brows and pondered deeply. Chapter 989. Soul, Rending Power? Nyation was taken aback, not understanding what Corpse Lord meant. Soul-rending power was something Nyation was familiar with. It wasn't a colding energy. Master, do you have a lot of strange metal pieces that you took from the Soul Splitter? Corpse Demon Lord asked excitedly. Yeah. Nyation still didn't understand. Instead, he became even more confused. Back in the forbidden land of wind and cloud, Nyation killed a lot of soul-rending wolves and soul-rending men. Those soul-rending wolves didn't have soul cores, but they had a strange metal piece with dense patterns carved on it. Corpse Lord chuckled. I think those metal pieces are very strange. If I can release soul-rending power, I can use it to activate the power of desolation. Really? Nyation went blank for a moment before a burning look appeared in his eyes. If he could really activate the power of desolation, he could at least save Rui Chinyu from the Forbidden Ice Stone. It's just a feeling. Corpse Lord laughed, as if he was very confident in his feeling. Nyation took out a piece of soul-rending steel piece and carefully felt it. He tried to inject his spirit force into the piece, but to no avail. Although he could feel that the soul-rending steel piece contained a huge amount of power, he couldn't activate it. Sword Elder. Nyation tried for a long time, but finally gave up and shouted with his divine sense. Sword Elder was busy healing Nyetchio, so he didn't know what Nyation and Corpse Lord were talking about. Soul-rending steel crystal. When Sword Elder saw the metal piece in Nyetion's hand, he was stunned and shouted, "Why do you have soul-rending steel crystal?" Soul-rending steel crystal? Nyetion was also stunned. So this metal piece was called soul-rending steel crystal. Since Sword Elder recognized this soul-rending steel crystal, he must know how to release the soul-rending power. Nyation didn't hide anything and told him everything that had happened in the forbidden land of wind and cloud. After hearing this, the Sword Elder was very surprised. He said, I didn't expect that the Dragon Rebel tribe was not destroyed back then. Instead, they hid themselves. Nyation wasn't surprised that the Sword Senior knew about the Dragon Rebel tribe. Previously, N.I. Jiaming recognized the Ink Jade Dragon Sword, and Sword Elder also knew N.I. Jiaming's identity. The two of them seemed to have known each other for a long time. Sword Elder, do you know how to release the energy contained within the cracked soul steel crystal? Nyation was slightly nervous as he asked. I know. The Sword Elder nodded with a smile and said, the split soul iron crystal needs to be stimulated by the spirit force. I can use the sword rune to stimulate the split soul iron crystal soul power. However, the sword rune in your body is too weak, so the split soul power that can be stimulated will not be much. Old man sword, I need a lot of soul-splitting energy. Just a little will do. Corpse Demon King chuckled, feeling a little excited. The Sword Elder didn't care. He nodded and directly came out of the furnace of hell. Nyation handed over a small piece of split soul iron crystal. His eyes flashed, and he couldn't help but feel nervous. All right, release your sword will. The Sword Elder took a deep breath and signaled Nyation to release his sword will. Nyetion's body shook, and his sword was released all over his body, filling the entire room. Within the sword will, there were surging sword runes like tiny tadpoles. The Sword Elder's hand formed a strange seal, and a palm-sized spirit formation condensed on his palm. What a mysterious spirit formation. Nyation used his divine sense to feel it, and he was shocked. Although the spirit formation condensed by the Sword Elder was small, it was very complicated and mysterious. The Sword Elder turned his palm, and the spirit formation began to operate. The sword runes in the space were immediately drawn by the power of the spirit formation and slowly flowed into the spirit formation. Then, the Sword Elder placed the split soul iron crystal into the spirit formation and controlled the sword rune power to permeate into the iron crystal. Seeing this scene, Nyetion's heart was in his throat. The power of sword runes was very mysterious. and the Sword Elder's understanding of sword runes was far beyond Nietion's imagination. As the sword runes permeated, the split soul iron crystal slowly melted, and a black soul-splitting power was released, but did not dissipate. Instead, it was sealed by the spirit formation. It really is the soul-splitting power. Nietion was very familiar with this aura. It was the soul-splitting power of the soul-splitting man. After a moment, the whole split soul iron crystal completely melted and turned into a dense soul-splitting power. From the outside, it looked like a cloud of black gas. Done. The Sword Elder let out a long breath, and his whole body became very dim, as if he would disappear at any time. Nietion took the spirit formation, and the Sword Elder's figure immediately disappeared, returning to the furnace of hell. He was only a soul body, and could not leave Nietion's body for too long. "Thank you, Sword Elder." Nietion faintly smiled, holding the spirit formation in his palm, and said to the Corpse King, "So much soul-splitting power. Is it enough?" "Yes, it is." The Corpse King laughed and directly came out of the chaotic original coffin, and said, "Master, I will now use the soul-splitting power to activate the Desolate Inheritance's desolate cold power, and we will be able to unseal Lady Rain from the Forbidden Ice Stone." "Good." Nietion nodded and took out the Forbidden Ice Stone. Rui Qinyu's figure was lying flat in the Forbidden Ice Stone. Her face did not change at all, and there was still a faint smile on her lips. "Rui Qinyu, get ready to come out." Nietion smiled. As soon as Rui Qinyu was unsealed from the Forbidden Ice Stone, he would use the demonic dragon's liquid to suppress the blood-devour power in her body. "Corpse King, this time it's all up to you," Nietion said, handing the spirit formation and the desolate inheritance to the Corpse King. "Don't worry, Master." The Corpse King chuckled, very confident. Taking a deep breath, the Corpse King's eyes became calm, and he slowly activated the soul-splitting power in the spirit formation, sending it into the desolate inheritance. The moment the soul-splitting power was released, it was abnormally violent, and the space shook violently. Immediately after, the desolate inheritance was stimulated by the soul-splitting power. A terrifying chill spread out, and the surrounding space was directly frozen. The desolate inheritance contained the most intense desolate cold power, and it was far stronger than the desolate cold power in Ing Li Hao's body. Nietion's eyes narrowed, and he immediately activated the ultimate Fire Scarlet Heaven armor to prevent the chill from entering his body. At this time, the Corpse King directly activated all the soul-splitting power, bombarding the desolate inheritance. Suddenly, an even more terrifying desolate cold power appeared, and the space turned frosty white, and the chill was bone-chilling. Although Nietion activated the ultimate Fire Scarlet Heaven armor, he still could not resist the invasion of the cold power. In an instant, all the meridians in his body were frozen. He did not expect the power in the desolate inheritance to be so strong. "Master!" The Corpse King screamed, as if he wanted to say something, but his whole body was frozen by the cold power, and he immediately stopped moving. "Oh no!" Nietion's eyes trembled, and he screamed. The next moment, his whole body was frozen. Chapter 990. In the room, just as Nietion and Corpse Demon King were frozen, something strange happened. Boom! The Forbidden Ice Stone shook inexplicably, as if it had been bombarded by some kind of power. A small crack appeared on the stone. In the next moment, the desolate cold power in the air surged into the Forbidden Ice Stone. Crack! 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 As the desolate cold power surged into the Forbidden Ice Stone, cracking sounds could be heard, and cracks began to appear. The Forbidden Ice Stone is about to be unsealed. Although Nietion's body was frozen, his divine sense was still very clear. He saw everything in front of him and felt an inexplicable throbbing in his heart. The Forbidden Ice Stone was like a whirlpool that absorbed the desolate cold power, and in an instant, it was sucked dry. The Forbidden Ice Stone cracked even more, but it did not break. Nietion and Corpse Demon King felt that the surrounding cold power had weakened, and their bodies regained their mobility. Corpse Demon King returned to the chaotic original coffin, with a hint of fear in his eyes. Is the desolate cold power not strong enough? Nietion murmured as he looked at the forbidden ice stone. Bang! Just as he finished speaking, an explosive sound rang out, and the forbidden ice stone directly shattered. Boom! In an instant, a vast forbidden ice force spread out, and the void shook for a moment, then returned to normal. The desolate cold power has been broken. Nietion was overjoyed. He took a step forward and sensed that Rui Qianyu's aura was slowly recovering. Rui Qianyu let out a low moan and slowly opened her eyes. The moment she opened her eyes, something strange happened again. Boom! The desolate inheritance that was floating in the air suddenly shook violently, releasing an extremely terrifying power. Then, it became violent, and the terrible cold power spread out like a river bursting through a dam. Nietion didn't even have time to react before he was once again frozen by the desolate cold power. The Ice Frost Demon Lord was in existence close to peak Heavenly Emperor in his previous life. The inheritance power that he left behind was very powerful. It was definitely not something that the current Nietion could resist. The desolate inheritance became berserk. Desolate, cold energy spread uncontrollably, like an invisible tide, instantly spreading out. In the blink of an eye, the entire Imperial Advisor's mansion was frozen, followed by the entire Ice Snow City and even the entire snowy tundra. If someone were to overlook the ice and snow city from the sky, he would find that the crowd on the streets had stopped moving. Everyone in Ice Snow City was frozen by the desolate cold power. It was as if time had stopped in the entire city. Inside the room, Nietion's spiritual consciousness was still awake, but an endless amount of cold energy poured into his body, causing him to suffer immense pain. The terror of the desolate inheritance exceeded Nietion's expectations. The soul-splitting power had only released a very weak cold power. So how could the desolate inheritance suddenly go out of control? Could it be? At this time, Nietion suddenly thought of something, and his heart skipped a beat. For the desolate inheritance to suddenly go out of control, it was possible that it had found a suitable person to fuse with. When a martial artist fuses with an inheritance, it must be a matter of mutual consent. When a martial artist chooses an inheritance, the inheritance also chooses the martial artist. Just like when Mo Rushi fused with the ancient Phoenix inheritance, she was the only one who triggered the Phoenix cry to the 9 heavens. This was because the Phoenix inheritance had chosen her. Now that the desolate inheritance suddenly became berserk, it was very likely that it was the same situation. Nietion and the Corpse Demon King were not suitable to fuse with the desolate inheritance, and the Sword Elder was a soul body, so it was even more impossible. Then there was only one person left, Rui Qianyu. It's Rui Qianyu's 9 color pupils. In an instant, Nietion immediately understood that it must be the 9 color pupils that triggered the release of the desolate inheritance. The 9 color pupils was one of the 10 great, innate, abnormal pupils. The most terrifying thing was that each pupil had a different attribute. Now, Rui Qianyu had already opened 3 pupils: blue pupil, red pupil, and black pupil. The blue pupil corresponded to the ice attribute, which was actually a variation of the water attribute. The red pupil corresponded to the fire attribute, and the black pupil corresponded to the dark attribute. If Rui Qianyu could open all 9 pupils, she would become a martial artist with 9 elemental fusion. This was a very terrifying thing, because there were not many martial artists who had 2 attributes at the same time, let alone a martial artist with 9 elemental fusion. Unfortunately, among those who had the 9 color pupils, no one had ever opened the 4th pupil. The 3rd pupil was already the limit. Perhaps Rui Qianyu could do what all the previous martial artists had not been able to do before. Almost at the moment when Nietion understood, the desolate inheritance suddenly turned into a cloud of black gas and directly entered Rui Qianyu's pupils. Then, the cold energy in the space disappeared, and everything returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. Nietion was stunned for a moment and couldn't react at all. The whole process of fusing had ended in an instant, just like that. This corpse demon king was also stunned and couldn't figure out what was going on at all. Rui Qinyuar, are you okay? Nie Tian was stunned for a few seconds and finally reacted. He took a step forward, and even his voice was a little shaky. I'm fine. Thank you for saving me, Rui Qinyu said lightly, and her expression was so calm that it made people's hair stand on end. Nie Tian swallowed his saliva, and after a while, he slightly calmed down. What is this place? Rui Qinyu looked around and suddenly asked. This is... Nie Tian was about to answer, and then suddenly thought of something. Rui Qinyu was imprisoned by the ice-forbidden stone and couldn't feel the passage of time at all, so she must have thought that he had just arrived at Shumi time and was now in the Black Moon Empire. Nie Tian took a deep breath and briefly told her what had happened recently. After hearing what Nie Tian said, Rui Qinyu's cold face finally showed a trace of surprise, but then it disappeared. Rui Qinyu, how do you feel now? Do you feel uncomfortable? Nie Tian suddenly found that the power of Blood Devour in Rui Qinyu's body seemed to have disappeared strangely, and the latter's condition was very good, and her breath was also very stable. I'm fine. Rui Qinyu nodded, and then slightly frowned and said, I feel that there's a very powerful force in my body, and it seems to be fusing with my body. It's the power of the inheritance of desolation. Nie Tian was slightly excited and explained a little about the inheritance of desolation to Rui Qinyu, and finally said, you should cultivate in seclusion for a period of time. If you can completely fuse with the inheritance of desolation, I believe your strength will definitely usher in a skyrocketing rise. Nie Tian had already seen how strong the power of the inheritance of desolation was just now. Fortunately, the cold power of desolation just now was only released and did not show too strong invasiveness. Otherwise, Nie Tian would have become a pile of ice at this moment. Nie Tian speculated that after Rui Qinyu completely fused with the inheritance of desolation, her strength could at least be raised to the peak of the heaven realm, and it was even possible to break through the plane's restriction. The Ice Devil Monarch was one of the 9 great devil monarchs under the command of the 9 Nether Devil Monarch in his previous life, and was a 9th level Heaven Emperor expert. It could be imagined how strong the inheritance of desolation was. Chapter 991. Rui Qinyu was very happy to have unexpectedly fused with the barren inheritance, but she did not show it. Although she didn't know how strong the power of the desolate inheritance was, the feeling of power bursting in her body was absolutely real. Rui Qinyu knew that the reason she was able to live until now was all thanks to Nie Tian. She could not remember how many times Nie Tian had saved her. Gradually, she felt a kind of dependence on Nie Tian, but she didn't show it. Nie Tian. At this moment, a clear voice sounded and a figure entered the room. It was Mo Rushi. The power released by the barren inheritance froze everyone. Mo Rushi was worried that something had happened to Nie Tian, so she hurried over to check on him. Miss Ryu, you're awake. Mo Rushi was very happy to see that Rui Qinyu had woken up. She knew that the reason Nie Tian came to the snowy ice fields was to save Rui Qinyu. However, she was not jealous. She was very happy to see that Rui Qinyu had woken up. Rui Qinyu nodded slightly and squeezed out a faint smile. Rushi, let's go out first. Rui Qinyu has just woken up and needs to rest, Nie Tian said faintly, and left Rui Qinyu with Mo Rushi. Rui Qinyu saw that Nie Tian and Mo Rushi were so intimate, and she felt a little disappointed. Nie Tian, are you okay? What happened just now? Mo Rushi asked anxiously as she walked out of the room with Nie Tian. With a faint smile on his face, Nie Tian explained what had just happened. Miss Ryu fused with the barren inheritance. Mo Rushi was slightly taken aback. She frowned slightly and said, Then, is she stronger than before? When can I catch up with her? Nie Tian chuckled and suddenly whispered into Mo Rushi's ear, You will soon catch up to her, and your strength will soon surpass mine. Really? Mo Rushi's eyes flickered with disbelief. She thought that Nye was just teasing her. Right now, she and Nye were almost two major realms apart. How could she possibly catch up? Of course it's true. Nye nodded firmly, his gaze firm. I believe in you. Mo Rushi's gaze softened as she snuggled into Nye embrace. There was still half a month's time before the Nine altar would open. As long as Mo Rushi absorbed the altar's energy, there was a high chance that she would break through to the Heavenly Emperor realm. At that time, she would be the #1 person in the Sumeru world. After returning to his room, Nye immediately entered into a state of cultivation. In the following period of time, he planned to use the demonic dragon liquid to increase his strength. The Nine altar was about to open, and the people from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss would definitely come. It would be best if the 10,000 Demons Dragon Head arrived after the altar opened. If they came earlier, there would definitely be a huge battle with Nye. Demonic Dragon Liquid. The energy from 3 demonic dragons' hearts is enough to increase my strength again. Nye took out a bottle of demonic dragon liquid, smiled faintly, and directly drank it. The instant the demonic dragon liquid entered his body, a vast energy suddenly erupted, and a terrifying dragon roar actually rang in Nye ears. He immediately circulated his yuan meridians and started to absorb the demonic dragon liquid's energy. As the demonic dragon liquid was absorbed, Nye felt his aura skyrocket, and a terrifying energy surged in his body. At this time, Nye suddenly felt the 9 dragon veins tremble violently and actually became berserk. Waves of majestic dragon energy surged out, bombarding the meridians in his limbs. Nye felt as if his entire body was being torn apart, and he couldn't help but scream. This energy was too terrifying, and it seemed as if it was going to tear Nye body apart. Nye gritted his teeth and forced himself to calm down. However, at this time, the 9 dragon veins continued to release dragon energy, as if there was a giant dragon raging in his body. It's the dragon energy that was sealed in the dragon veins. In the next moment, Nye immediately understood that the raging energy in his body was the dragon energy that he had absorbed from the dragon coffin. Previously, he had absorbed the dragon energy of a giant golden dragon from the dragon coffin. However, after the dragon energy was absorbed by the dragon veins, it became the seal of the dragon veins. Therefore, although Nye had absorbed the dragon energy of the giant golden dragon, he couldn't use this energy. Now that he had consumed the demonic dragon liquid, the seal on the dragon veins was lifted and a vast amount of dragon energy was released. After understanding everything, Nye immediately calmed down. He endured the pain and continued to absorb the power of the demonic dragon liquid to lift the seal on the dragon veins. Half a day later, Nye felt the pain in his body gradually subside. He immediately looked inside the 9 dragon veins and found that the seal on the dragon veins had indeed been lifted, but only a little bit, about 1/10,000,000th of the entire seal. Nye couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. He had thought that the demonic dragon liquid could completely lift the seal on the dragon veins. However, lifting a little bit of the seal was not bad. He could use some dragon energy, and at least his martial body was much stronger than before. Then, Nye took out another bottle of demonic dragon liquid and drank it. Rui Qianyu's power of blood inexplicably disappeared, and she no longer needed the demonic dragon liquid. Of course, Nye couldn't waste it. Nye also didn't know why Rui Qianyu's power of blood inexplicably disappeared, but he knew that the reason she could fuse with the Desolate Inheritance must be because of the 9-colored blue pupil. The blue pupil was of the ice attribute, which was compatible with the Desolate Inheritance. Nye had seen Rui Qianyu use the blue pupil ice seal many times. He didn't know how terrifying the blue pupil would be after fusing with the Desolate Inheritance. For the next 10 days, Nye stayed in his room and cultivated hard. When he walked out of the room again, his strength had reached the 8th level of the Heaven Realm, only 1 level away from the peak of the Heaven Realm. At this time, Nietion was confident that he could fight against the four people at the peak of the summer world. This time, Nietion not only increased his strength by 2 levels, but more importantly, the seal on the dragon veins' body was lifted, which greatly increased his battle strength. Lord Nietion, something bad has happened. Just as Nietion walked out of the room, a panicked voice was heard, and an Huailin appeared. Something happened to the altar again? Nietion's eyes narrowed slightly. He instinctively thought that something had happened to the altar of Nine again. Lord Nietion, it's not the Nine altar that's in trouble this time. It's something even more important. And Huailin said with a panicked expression, people from the dragon abyss of 10,000 demons are here. Huh? Nietion's eyes darkened. The people from the 10,000 demons abyss had appeared at this time, and this caught him off guard. Who's here? Nietion immediately calmed down. With his current strength, he didn't fear anyone in the Sumeru world. Even if the head of the 10,000 demons abyss was here, he wouldn't be afraid. Chapter 992. 10,000 Demons Temples, Temple Master? Nietion was confused as he didn't know the identity and status of this Temple Master in the myriad demons dragon pool. Master Nietion, Temple Master Qin Yi is second only to Lord Dragonhead in the myriad demons dragon pool. Rumor has it that his strength is on par with Lord Dragonhead, and Huailin explained. So that's how it is, Nietion smiled faintly and said, where is he? I'll go meet him. Since this 10,000 demons temple master was on par with the myriad demons Dragonhead, his strength should also be at the 9th stage of the sky human realm. He's in the hall, and Huailin nodded and followed Nietion to the hall. Nietion arrived outside the hall and saw a black-robed cultivator sitting cross-legged with a cup of tea in his hand, looking very relaxed. That person's aura was restrained, but he still gave off an oppressive feeling. It seems that this person is the 10,000 Demons Temple Master. He really is at the 9th stage of the sky human realm. Nietion smiled faintly and used his divine sense to investigate. He found that this person's aura was even stronger than old ancestor Ice Snow. And Huailin, are you so afraid of this temple master? At this time, Qin Yi's voice sounded. Although it sounded calm, it contained an extremely powerful pressure. And Huailin's body trembled, and he almost fell down. He wanted to run over, but was stopped by Nietion. You're my subordinate. There's no need to be afraid of him. Nietion smiled faintly and entered the hall. And Huailin wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and hurried over. And Huailin, you really did betray the dragon pool. Qin suddenly raised his head and locked his gaze on Huailin. And Huailin lowered his head and didn't dare to speak. He followed closely behind Nietion. Nietion stared at the person in front of him with a calm expression. Then, his gaze landed on the person behind Qin Yi. A look of realization flashed across his eyes as he said, Luo Run, it seems that you are the one sent by the dragon head of 1,000 demons. The person standing behind Huailin was none other than Luo Ren. Nietion, you're not that stupid after all. Luo Ren smiled playfully, without the slightest bit of panic on his face. Nietion was puzzled. The myriad demonic dragon abyss had spent so much effort on the Nine altar. Why didn't they send someone to keep an eye on it? It turned out that Luo Run was a spy arranged by the dragon head of 10,000 demons to keep an eye on Huailin. Previously, Luo Run had said that Nietion was someone from the abyss of 10,000 demons and dragons. So it was just a smokescreen to distract Nietion. Now, everything was clear. Luo Ren must have sent the news of the 9 altar's recovery back to the myriad demons dragon abyss. That was why Qin Yi was here. If nothing unexpected happened, the head of the myriad demonic dragons would arrive in a few days. You came here to kill me? Nietion no longer cared about Luo Ren. After all, Luo Ren was just a small fry. Instead, he set his eyes on Qin Yi. Since Qin Yi dared to show up in the Grand Preceptor's mansion despite knowing everything, it was obvious that he was here to kill Nietion. Yes, Qin Yi's lips curved into a cold smile as he said, Nietion, you have really surprised this king. Not only did you kill the high priest, but even the dragon head himself couldn't kill you. Your strength has really surprised this king. You think you can kill me? Tian smiled indifferently, full of provocation. Qin Yi appeared in the Imperial Advisor's mansion so brazenly and directly admitted that he was here to kill Tian. Such an arrogant attitude was also very surprising. Although Qin Yi was very strong, Tian didn't fear him in the slightest. If it was 10 days ago, he might have been a little bit afraid. But now, he didn't even put Qin Yi in his eyes. Luo Ren smiled coldly at the side. Although he had seen Tian kill the Crown Prince and Emperor of the Snowy Ice Fields, he definitely didn't think that Tian had the strength to fight against Qin Yi. Qin Yi was second only to the dragon head in the myriad demonic dragon's abyss. Little brat, how dare you be so arrogant in front of this king? You are courting death. Qin Yi sensed the disdain in Tian's eyes. He furrowed his brows and instantly released his killing intent. A mighty aura rolled out of his body and crazily pressed down. Tian's expression didn't change, but his body trembled and the celestial being domain opened. The two auras collided in the air. Boom! With a loud bang, everything around them was directly crushed. The entire hall collapsed and turned into ruins. And Huailin and Luo Ren trembled at the same time and hurriedly retreated. Tian and Qin Yi were too strong. If they stayed by his side, they would only be cannon fodder. Little brat, hand over the Spirit Dragon Emperor ring, and I will spare your life. Qin Yi's figure soared into the sky, and a dark cloud appeared behind him. The whole sky became dark because of it. Is it for my dragon ring again? Tian smiled faintly as he stood in the air, looking as sharp as a sword. Li Qianhao, Yu Jingji, Yin Zishu, and everyone else from the myriad demonic dragon's abyss came for Tian's dragon ring. It seemed that the Spirit Dragon Emperor ring was very precious. If you want the dragon ring, come and get it yourself. Tian looked at Qin Yi and slightly narrowed his eyes. He had already seen that Qin Yi's elemental spirit was of the dark attribute. This was rare. You are courting death. Qin Yi let out a furious roar as the dark clouds behind him surged. He slammed his palm down, and the dark clouds instantly moved. They condensed into a huge palm in midair, and with a momentum as great as that of a mountain, it smashed towards Tian. The moment Qin Yi slammed his palm, the momentum of heaven and earth changed instantly. The surrounding ice shook as if it was about to collapse. Your aura is very strong, but you want to kill me? You are too weak. Tian's eyes flashed, and after muttering to himself, the long sword in his hand suddenly appeared. Boundless Sword will surged out, and the sword Qi shot out 10,000 meters away. A 1,000-meter-long sword shadow appeared in the void, mighty and majestic, covering the sky and earth. Boom! With a loud explosion, the sword shadow's terrifying aura was released in an instant. The power released in an instant destroyed the huge palm. Qin Yi saw this scene, and his eyes suddenly trembled. He had never thought that Tian's strength would be so terrifying. With just a casual swing of the sword, he had broken his attack. Qin Yi hurriedly retreated and avoided the sword Qi, but the shock on his face could not be concealed. What is going on? On the ground, Luo Ren's expression froze. He had thought that Tian would be killed by Qin Yi, but the result was very different for what he had expected. Qin Yi was actually repelled by Tian's sword. Phew! On the other side, and Huailin let out a long breath of turbid air, and a touch of passion appeared in his eyes. He could not help but laugh. Fortunately, I did not choose the wrong side. At this time, Qiu Shan and the others also appeared. Even Rui Qinyu was alarmed and came out of the room. Thousand Demons Temple Master, is this your strength? You're just SOSO. Tian smiled coldly, his eyes filled with disdain. With such strength, he wanted to snatch the Spirit Dragon Emperor ring? He really did not know where Qin Yi got his confidence from. Bastard! Qin Yi cursed, and the arrogance on his face froze in an instant. However, he immediately calmed down, and a huge black shadow rose behind him. From afar, it was a huge black dragon. Chapter 993. In the void, Tian and Qin Yi were confronting each other. Qin Yi's eyes flashed with a cold light. and a huge shadow rose behind him. It was a black dragon. The moment the black dragon shadow appeared, the space was immediately filled with endless dragon chi. The surging aura was overwhelming, almost suffocating. This is not the giant spirit real body. Nietian looked at the black dragon shadow behind Qin Yi and could not help but stare. This was not the giant spirit real body, but another kind of power. Dragon Ring. The next moment, Nietian immediately realized that the black dragon shadow must have been condensed by the power in the dragon ring released by Qin Yi. Brat, prepare to die. Qin Yi's eyes were as cold as iron, and a vicious voice rolled out from his throat. With a roar, the black dragon shadow behind him rushed into the sky, and the world shook. The black dragon shadow's momentum was extremely strong, and its whole body was releasing surging dragon chi. The world was filled with dark aura, as if the black dragon was the absolute ruler of this world. What a powerful momentum! When the crowd on the ground saw the black dragon's momentum, they all gasped, and their hearts were extremely shocked. This was the real power of the dragon, and mortals could only kneel in submission. Nietian stood in the void, and his whole body's celestial realm expanded to resist the power of the black dragon. He could feel that the black dragon's momentum was majestic, even more terrifying than his thunder dragon. Go to hell! Qin Yi roared, and the black dragon crazily rushed out. The void shook violently, and the world was shrouded by the dark dragon chi. A terrifying black light shot out, attacking Nietian. Wherever it passed, it left a black mark, as if the space was directly torn apart. Nietian's face was calm, and his eyes were so firm that it made people's hair stand on end. Boom! His body trembled slightly, and the sword intent that shrouded his body erupted in an instant. The terrible sword intent shot out in all directions, and actually filled the sky into a huge sword intent net. On the sword net, the power of thunder, the power of stars, and the power of the proud sword surged wildly, and the sharp sword intent completely broke out in the void. Boom! With a loud explosion, the black figure collided with the sword net. The terrifying dragon chi actually broke through the sword net, turned into a black light, and whizzed towards Nietian. Nietian seemed to have been prepared for this. The proud sword heavenly wings formed by sword shadows appeared behind him. With a flap of both wings, he leaped high into the sky and avoided the attack of the black radiance. Not dead, Qin Yi's eyes darkened slightly. He did not expect that Nietian could escape from the black dragon. You want to kill me with this kind of strength? What a joke. Tianling sneered and released a huge amount of dragon chi from his body. It also condensed into a giant dragon in the void. Its body was golden in color, and purple gold lightning surged around its body. It was the power of thunder. Not long ago, Nietian had unsealed the dragon vein's power. This was a good opportunity to test the might of the sealed dragon chi. Another giant dragon. Everyone saw the shadow of a giant dragon behind Nietian. The mighty dragon might was even stronger than Qin Yi's black dragon. They could not help but tremble and look shocked. This was the first time Huailin saw Nietian release dragon chi. He did not expect it to be so powerful, even more terrifying than Qin Yi. The power of the spirit dragon royal ring. Qin Yi's eyes darkened again, and there was an unconcealable passion in his eyes. His dragon ring was only a 4-star dragon ring, while the spirit dragon royal ring was a 9-star dragon ring. The power between the two was like heaven and earth. If he could get the spirit dragon royal ring on Nietian's hand, he could definitely break through to the heavenly emperor realm. Thinking of this, there was a touch of madness in Qin Yi's eyes. Nietian, you don't even know how to use the spirit dragon emperor ring. It's a complete waste of God's gift in your hands. With a wild roar, Qin Yi blurred in emotion, stepping on his black dragon as he charged towards Nietian. In order to get the spirit dragon royal ring, Qin Yi almost went crazy. Nietian frowned slightly, and there was a strong sense of contempt in his eyes. He did not know how to use the power of the spirit dragon royal ring, but he was not using the power of the dragon ring, but the power sealed in the dragon vein in his body. "Come on!" Nietion let out a deep roar, and the golden dragon surged out. It was like a moving mountain in the sky, and a mighty aura was released. The power of heaven and earth was directly changed, and the space was tightened by an invisible force, as if it was about to be torn apart. In the void, two giant dragons rolled and moved, one black and one gold, constantly releasing an oppressive aura in the sky. In the next moment, a magnificent scene appeared. The giant dragons collided head-on, and the void trembled, and there was a sudden loud sound. The confrontation of Dragon Chi was a head-on confrontation of absolute power. In an instant, endless Dragon Chi shot out, and cracks appeared between heaven and earth, as if the whole world was going to collapse in an instant. The crowd looked at the scene in the sky, and their hearts were shocked. Nietion and Qin Yi were both too strong. This level of head-on collision was really earth-shattering. Crack, crack, crack. Following that, endless sounds of explosions rang out, as if bones were being broken. The crowd looked closely, and it turned out to be the bodies of two giant dragons colliding. The bodies formed by Dragon Chi could not withstand the huge impact and collapsed inch by inch. Nietion and Qin Yi were in the center of the collision, and they were both suffering the terrifying impact of the Dragon Chi. Bang! Bang! Finally, two muffled sounds were heard, and the two figures were sent flying by the airwaves, each retreating thousands of meters. Nietion stabilized his body, and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. His whole body was covered with bloody wounds, and it was glaring to the eye. However, his body was covered with flesh wounds. Under the impact of that degree, even his body could not withstand it. On the other hand, Qin Yi was in a worse state than Nietion. His whole body was a bloody mess, and even many of his bones were broken. His whole body was twisted, and he stood crookedly in the void. Nietion had the 9-star dragon vein in his body, and with the support of 280 billion star power, his martial body was not much weaker than a Sky Emperor Realm warrior. But even so, he was only able to withstand the terrifying force of the impact. Although Qin Yi had the dragon vein in his body, it was far from Nietion's 9-star dragon vein. In addition, there was no other support, and his martial body was not at the same level as Nietion. Naturally, he could not withstand the impact of the collision of the two dragons. Qin Yi was lucky that he was still alive at this moment. Is it over? Everyone's eyes trembled. It seemed that the battle was about to end. Qin Yi was seriously injured, and he had no strength to fight anymore. Nietion. At this moment, Qin Yi's body trembled violently, and he shouted out Nietion's name, word by word. His eyes were filled with terrible anger, and it was obvious that he was extremely angry. How could he have imagined that he would be defeated by Nietion using the power of the dragon ring? Before fighting with Nietion, Qin Yi had always regarded him as an ant, at most an ant with some strength. As long as he wanted to, he could crush him at any time. Chapter 994. Qin Yi's eyes were filled with flames of anger, and his whole body was trembling. Nietion's strength was far beyond his expectations, but at this time he did not have the slightest fear in his heart. Instead, the corner of his mouth pulled up into a strange smile. Nietion's eyes narrowed slightly. Qin Yi was defeated, but it seemed that he did not want to stop. Instead, his killing intent was even stronger. Did he have an even more terrifying trump card that he had not revealed? Nietion, today, I will let you see my true strength. At this time, Qin Yi suddenly roared. His already distorted body shook violently, and in an instant, it returned to normal. Boom! A cloud of dark energy gushed out of Qin Yi's body, washing away the blood stains on his body. His whole body was shrouded in darkness, and a huge aura surged in an instant, spreading in all directions, and the whole sky directly darkened. What's going on? How did his aura become so powerful? The crowd's eyes trembled violently, and they all exclaimed. Nietion's expression slightly stiffened, and he felt a very familiar aura. Sage's bone. There was a sage's tomb in the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss. As the lord of the 10,000 Demons Temple, Qin Yi's position in the Dragon Abyss was second only to the 10,000 Demons Dragon Head. How could he not have a sage's bone? Nie Tian, I have never shown my strength in front of anyone. You can force me to this point. You should die without regrets. Qin Yi's eyes surged with killing intent, and his insolent voice spread in the darkness. It seemed that in his eyes, Nie Tian was already a dead man. On his back, two terrible black things surged, as if they were alive. They quickly grew from the shoulder blades, like crazy tree branches, directly stretching in the air. They were actually black bones. Black bone demonic flame. This is the second primordial spirit that was born after I destroyed my own primordial spirit. It is made from two sage shoulder blades and has been integrated with my body, which can stimulate the terrifying power of the sage's bone. Qin Yi shouted arrogantly, and the black bones on his back kept growing. In the blink of an eye, it was already a few meters long and completely stretched out. It was actually a pair of black bone wings. The black bone wings rolled in the air, and terrible black flames surged on them. Rays of black brilliance released dark, evil energy, filled with the power of destruction. Qin Yi so scary, and Huailin looked at Qin Yi, his face stiff, and his eyes revealed uncontrollable fear. Who would have thought that Qin Yi's body hid such terrifying power? At this moment, Nie Tian's eyes could not help but tremble. Qin Yi's trump card was beyond his expectations. The latter was too vicious. He actually destroyed his own origin spirit just to fuse with the power of the Saint's Bone. Qin Yi's degree of integration with the Saint Bone was obviously better than Yin Zishu and Yu Jing. Judging from the terrifying bone wings behind Qin Yi, his battle prowess was not much worse than a Heavenly Emperor realm martial artist. Qin Yi's eyes flashed with a cold light. The wings on his back fluttered, releasing dark, evil energy. Waves of death aura pressed down on Nie Tian. Nie Tian did not dare to be careless. He pushed his sword intent to the extreme to resist the pressure of the death aura. But even so, he still felt slightly suffocated. At this time, Qin Yi could no longer be treated as a Heaven Realm martial artist, and could only be treated as a Heaven Emperor realm martial artist. At this moment, Nie Tian also understood why Qin Yi dared to come to the Grand Tutor's residence so arrogantly. It turned out that he had such a terrifying trump card. Nie Tian died obediently. Qin Yi smiled coldly. His cold laughter resounded in the dark void. Then, he took a step forward, and the bone wings on his back spread open. A terrifying dark force whizzed out, drawing black traces between the heavens and earth. The speed of the dark energy was extremely fast. Nie Tian only felt a ball of black flames rolling in front of him. Immediately after, a destructive aura directly descended. Break! Nie Tian had nowhere to retreat. His eyes turned cold as he stabbed out with his sword. Sword intent blossomed in the air as a sword light bombarded the dark energy. Boom! The void trembled violently. The black light and sword intent shot out and vibrated. Nie Tian felt an oppressive aura of death directly bombarding his body. Nie Tian's figure retreated 1,000 meters. After stabilizing himself, his body trembled and he spat out a mouthful of blood. It was dirty black. What a terrifying power! Nie Tian was surprised. Qin Yi's control of the power of the Saint's Bone was very good. The oppressive aura of the black bone demonic flame contained extremely terrifying dark energy. Nie Tian could faintly feel that Qin Yi's combat power seemed to be no less than the Heaven Emperor realm assassins from the Heaven Realm. The power of the Saint's Bone is too terrifying. This guy's a bit tricky, Nie Tian thought. If Qin Yi was just an ordinary 9th level Heaven Realm martial artist, he would have been killed by Nie Tian long ago. However, he not only had the power of the Dragon Ring, but also the second primordial spirit transformed from the Saint's Bone. It was really not easy to deal with. You actually didn't die after taking the power of the Black Bone demonic flame head-on. You surprised me again. Qin Yi sneered when he saw that Nie Tian did not die and only suffered some minor injuries. The killing intent in his eyes became more intense. The crowd below looked at the two people in the sky. They were shocked to the extreme. Although Tian and Qin Yi were both celestial realm martial artists, their real combat power was enough to rival Heaven Emperor realm martial artists. Tian, don't let anything happen to you. Mo Rushi's little face was nervous, and her forehead was covered with fine beads of sweat. Rui Qinyu looked calm. Cold, she looked at the two people fighting fiercely in the sky. Occasionally, her eyes would flash with a strange light. Tian, let's see if you can take the second move. At this time, Qin Yi's figure moved again. The bone wings behind him shook, and his figure directly turned into a black light. His whole body turned into a sea of fire, and the flame was black, like a boundless dark cloud burning, rolling toward Tian. The powerful pressure made Tian's eyes narrow again. Sky-covering totem. Without hesitation, endless starlight appeared behind Tian and instantly condensed into a giant starlight net, covering his whole body. The black sea of fire spread endlessly, like a monstrous wave surging in midair. The dark light covered everything. And yet Tian's whole body surged with starlight. The dazzling starlight tried to cut through the dark space. Rumble! The next moment, the two huge and boundless forces finally collided, and the terrible aura raged in the void. Above the sky, there were countless sounds of explosions, as if the whole sky had become shaky and would fall at any time. Tian struggled to resist, and the domain origin array in his body operated crazily, releasing the surging power of the stars, supporting the sky-covering totem. But unfortunately, the power of the black bone demonic flame was too strange, and it actually penetrated into the sky-covering totem little by little. Chapter 995. In the void, Tian operated the domain origin formation and kept releasing the power of the stars to maintain the shrouding the sky totem. However, the shrouding the sky totem was infiltrated with the dark, evil energy of the black bone demonic flame. Crackling sounds were heard continuously. Large tracts of starlight collapsed, and the entire shrouding the sky totem suddenly became riddled with holes. The black bone demonic flame was Qin Yi's second primordial spirit. It was transformed from two huge sage shoulder blades. When fully activated, it could stimulate the terrifying power contained in the sage bones. Even yet, Tian found it difficult to compete with the power of the sage. The power of the stars was the origin of power. Unfortunately, Tian could not exert the true power of the stars. Tian died. Qin Yi sensed that Tian was about to die. The black bone devil flame behind him became even more violent. The bone wings were fully extended, and a huge amount of dark, evil energy surged out from the black wings. From afar, it looked like a dark curtain that covered the sky. Boom! Boom! The wings behind Qin Yi shook, and two terrible forces of destruction descended, condensing into a pair of black wings in the air, covering the sky and pressing down. So scary! Everyone's eyes tightened, and their hearts could not help but tremble. The moment the black wings whistled, it gave people an invisible sense of oppression. It seemed that even breathing was blocked, and their hearts were pressed down by a huge stone. Oh no! Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. He did not expect Qin Yi's black bone demonic flame to be so terrifying. It seemed that the degree of integration between Qin Yi and the sage bones was beyond his expectations. The power of the demonic flame released by the black bone demonic flame was more powerful than the power of the rules of heaven and earth. The black wings pressed down from above, and yet Tian suddenly felt a suffocating sense of oppression. Fight! At the moment of life and death, Tian moved his mind. The spirit dragon royal ring on his finger flashed, and suddenly a mighty dragon power rolled out. The violent dragon energy directly opened up a space, and then a dark green divine dragon appeared, letting out a shocking dragon roar. Divine dragon! It's a real divine dragon. When the crowd felt the real dragon's might, they couldn't help but scream. Although the green dragon that appeared behind Tian was 100 meters long, its body was made of flesh and blood, not an illusion. The dragon head, the dragon horns, the dragon whiskers, the dragon scales, the dragon claws, and the dragon body were all extremely lifelike. Divine dragon. This was a real divine dragon. Who would have thought that Tian would actually release a divine dragon at this time? How is this possible? Qin Yi looked at the dark green divine dragon, and his heart suddenly trembled. His gaze actually stiffened for a moment. He could clearly feel that the dragon vein in his body was shaking violently and becoming restless, as if it had sensed a huge threat. Qin Yi could use the power of the dragon ring, but the dragon chi in his body could only condense into the shadow of a divine dragon, while what Tian released was a real dragon body of flesh and blood. This was a completely different concept, a qualitative difference. "Break it for me," Tian roared, and the dark green divine dragon's body moved and directly rushed over. The domineering dragon's might shook the heavens and the earth, and the space was filled with rich dragon chi. Boom! The green dragon's figure swept past, and in the void, the pair of black wings in the void directly collapsed like paper. In the next moment, the green dragon broke through the billowing dark evil energy and directly descended in front of Qin Yi, its huge dragon claws bombarding the top of his head. The real power of the divine dragon, the kind of power that could tear everything apart and destroy everything, was incomparably terrifying. Qin Yi's eyes suddenly trembled, and the wings on his back stretched out like arms. Boom! With a violent, loud noise, the green dragon's dragon claws stagnated in midair and was actually blocked by Qin Yi's wings. Suddenly, an invisible wave of air surged like ripples, and the space trembled violently. The power of the sage's bone was very strong, and it could actually resist the green dragon's attack head-on. Although the green dragon's body was not big, it was a dragon body of flesh and blood, and with one claw, it could collapse a mountain. "Tear him from me." Tian's eyes slightly narrowed, and then the corner of his mouth twitched, revealing a cold and gloomy intent, and he growled. Crack! Crack! The green dragon's claws suddenly exerted force, and violent power was suddenly released. With two crisp sounds, it directly tore the black bone wings from Qin Yi's body. Oh! In the next moment, the incomparably mournful scream. Qin Yi's entire body was sent flying, and the sky was drenched with blood. This! The crowd looked at the scene in the void, and their eyes were full of fear. The green dragon's power was too terrifying, and it directly tore the sage's bone from Qin Yi's body. This kind of terrible power was unimaginable. Yet Tian moved and directly stepped on the green dragon, as if the dragon god had descended. Qin Yi's figure froze in midair, and his eyes were full of horror, and his voice became trembling. You, what kind of power is this? The power of the dragon ring. Tian's eyes were disdainful, and said coldly, Impossible. Qin Yi roared, and his whole body was trembling, as if he could fall at any time. The dragon ring could only release dragon chi. How could it release the real divine dragon? Everything in front of him was beyond the scope of Qin Yi's understanding, and it almost drove him crazy. Because my dragon ring is the sovereign ring, Tianling said, and then a cold light flashed in his eyes, and he said, I know you can see the myriad demon dragon head. If you want my spirit dragon sovereign ring, come and get it yourself. As his cold voice fell, Tian released a sharp sword will and directly killed Qin Yi, causing him to explode into a bloody light. Tian knew that the myriad demon dragon head left a soul seal on every dragon ring, so everything here could be seen by the myriad demon dragon head. At the same time, in the myriad demon hall of the myriad demon dragon abyss, an illusory figure stood there, releasing rolling black chi, like a burning black flame. This person was none other than the myriad demon dragon head. His figure trembled violently, and it was obvious that he was suppressing his terrifying anger. The scene in front of him was a bloody light, and it was the scene of Qin Yi's death. Bastard! After a long time, The myriad demon dragon head's suppressed anger finally erupted, and with a roar, the entire hall shook, and even the space trembled. Nyetian, Nyetian, Nyetian. The hoarse voice repeated a name, and the myriad demon dragon head seemed to have gone mad. The black flames around his body slowly dissipated, and what appeared was a human figure. But this human figure was incomparably strange. There was not the slightest bit of flesh on the myriad demon dragon head's body, and it was a complete skeleton, and its bones were dark gold in color, surging with terrifying black flames and emitting a strong aura of death. Nyetian, if I don't kill you, I'm not the myriad demon dragon head. The myriad demon dragon's head roared furiously, causing the entire hall to shake violently. It was as if it was on the verge of collapse. If Nyetian was here, he would be shocked to see the myriad demon dragon head's skeleton body, because the myriad demon dragon head's body was made of sage bones.